Welcome to GURUCAST, the Game Guru podcast for the community, by the community. I am DK Productions, the host of this podcast, and I get to talk to various members of the Game Guru and FPS creator community, and we will discuss how they got into game making, their motivation, and also their struggles and challenges. You never know what stories will be told today, so it's time to sit back, and I hope you enjoy episode 4 of GURUCAST. Alright everyone, today it is time to learn more about Avenging Eagle. He is a member of the community for 17 years, so with each episode we are really diving deeper into the history of TGC and their products. He made a name for himself with unique game ideas and excellent movie productions, one being the upcoming documentary about Game Guru and the game creators. Skilled on many levels and perhaps one of the most professional members I've known to date, I hope we can get to know the less professional and more personal side of Scott Tanner, aka Avenging Eagle. And finally, the time of waiting is over. Welcome to the podcast, Scott. How are you?
Thanks. I'm great, thanks. Thanks for having me. Just vibing out to that intro. It's great.
Yeah, thanks. So, man, I'm so looking forward to this, and so are the people I've written since then.
Yeah, it's good that I like the way this series kind of really delves into the real kind of cornerstones of the community, and where I've listened to all the episodes so far, and there's been some really great little insights given. So hopefully I'm able to contribute to that. God, has it been 17 years that I've been a member of the community? Man, that makes me feel so old.
Yeah. I check a lot of stuff prior to the podcast, preparing and all that. And yeah, indeed, your community profile says you are a member of this for 17 years.
Wow.
So for the start, I will just say one thing. It was basically you that inspired me to make this podcast. Like, when you interviewed me for your documentary, I really thought like, damn, that was cool. I want more of that. So yeah, thanks for reaching out to me and being an inspiration also to take
No
that
worries.
next step. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think the series is going really well so far. I tune into every episode, and yeah, like I said, I'm a big fan myself. I'm more used to being the one asking the questions than answering the questions, but yeah, I was very lucky to have you as a contributor for the documentary, which I'm sure we'll get into a bit later. So yeah, it's lovely to hear that it inspired you.
Awesome. Okay, so today we will of course talk about your movie creations, your game projects, and also your opinion on certain things.
Sure.
So let's start at the beginning. 17 years is a very long time. You must have been like 13 years old when you joined the community?
Yeah, something like that. It was 2005, I know that much. So yeah, I'd gotten into filmmaking the year before, and I'd spent a year making little movies, little like Lego animations. I tried to make a live action Star Wars film that had failed, and it had kind of I'd lost a bit of enthusiasm for filmmaking, put it that way. And I was looking for another hobby that's something kind of creative, maybe a little bit technical. And at that time, FPS Creator had just been released. I think it came out in September 2005. And I actually saw it in a shop. I actually own a boxed copy of FPS Creator. It sits on my desk and has done ever since. And yeah, I was just really excited to kind of dive in and see what I could create. I'm not like a massive gamer, but I certainly enjoyed quite a few games up to that point. I was sort of a big fan of 007 Nightfire, and I was a big fan of the Quake series as well. I think probably the first FPS I ever played was probably Quake 2, and I'd gone through Quake 3 and Quake 4 and other games as well, kind of non-FPS games. I was a big fan of Age of Empires, and I love my driving games as well. I'm a big F1 fan, so I'd gotten really into Grand Prix 3, Grand Prix 4, yeah, then this product, FPS Creator, was sort of in front of me that promised all of these great things that I'd be able to create. So I pretty much dived straight in and saw that they had an online community and signed up to that straight away. I was just kind of getting into online communities at that point. I was already a member of a couple of forums to do with sort of filmmaking and stuff. So this was a new kind of community for me to be a part of, and pretty much straight away I saw how much collaboration there was and how helpful the other users were, and that's probably the reason why I've stuck around so long. There've been kind of long patches where I haven't used TGC products. I've been off doing other things, but I've always kept an eye on what's been going on in the community, because it is just such a helpful and informative, and certainly in the early days it was a really exciting place to be as well. You used to see so much innovation going on in the games that people were kind of bringing to the work in progress boards. And back then I wasn't really a 3D modeler. I was really just taking my first steps into kind of making 3D assets. So, you had these kind of artists like Cosmic Prophet, and, they were just churning out, and Bond One, churning out these amazing model packs. And it was awesome. So much creativity and so many great ideas.
And it still is today, I think. And Wolf also said that, it has certainly declined a bit over the years. But
yeah, I think it has. I think some of the faces in the community have changed. Obviously, there's grizzled veterans like us that still hang around with the sort of Stockholm syndrome that we have for TGC products. But yeah, I mean, there are new faces coming in, new members. Others will naturally move on to other projects. Like it's interesting to see people like Rolfie has gone on to do some great stuff in Unity. But we've kind of replaced those members with equally talented artists and game makers. So yeah, that's been the thing that's kind of kept me coming back, I think, for all those years.
Yeah, and I think many others feel like that as well. Yeah. So do you remember our first encounter? Because sadly I don't. For me, you were just there one day. But it's not. It's not like I have that particular moment like I had with T-Bone, where watching his video and commenting. I can't remember at all. Do you remember anything?
Well, I was a little bit late to the Game Guru party. I had left FPS Creator for many years. I'd gone off and I went to university and studied film production. So I spent, several years kind of really trying to do film production as like my main thing. But it got to the point where I just kind of fancied trying, getting back into game creation. And I'd been kind of vaguely following FPS Creator Reloaded, and I saw that it got renamed to Game Guru. But in all that time, I hadn't actually bought the product. I was just kind of looking at it and seeing, it doesn't look like it's quite capable of making games yet. But I finally took the plunge. I think it was on special offer on Steam in about 2017. And I bought it because I thought, well, maybe it's not quite there yet, but maybe I can make a little something in it.
Wow, so you bought it later than me, actually. That's crazy.
Yeah, I did.
That's crazy. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I was kind of, I was doing a lot of lurking in those days, just kind of reading stuff, but not really posting because I didn't have anything to show. I think there was, so my first Game Guru game, we may talk about this later, was called Extraction Point. And it was a sort of set in the Middle East in a fictitious war-torn country. And that originally started off life as an FPS Creator project, which I don't think I ever shared any pictures of, basically because, why would you build a mostly exterior shooter in FPS Creator in such a small map size? But that was the engine I was used to. So I had played around with kind of trying to create outdoor scenes in FPS Creator, hadn't gone so well. And then I saw Game Guru and I thought, you know what, maybe I will just buy Game Guru and give it a go, because it's much better suited to this idea I have about a modern military shooter set in a kind of war-torn sort of Middle Eastern country. And in terms of our first interaction, I'm not 100% sure, but it may have been to do with the sniper script. Do you remember this?
Oh, yeah. Oh, that could be, yeah.
So in Extraction Point, I was looking for sniper enemies, and there is a little idiosyncrasy of Game Guru is that AI only functions up to a certain distance from the player, and that's hard coded. You can't go beyond, I think, 1,500 units, and the AI will still function, or at least it was back then. So I needed a way to have these snipers shoot from incredible distances. And whenever I faced problems like that in the past, I would always turn to the community and sort of look around and see what was, what had already been coded or what had already been made by other people. And it was actually Small G who came up with the sniper script. And he did a couple of different versions, and it basically fakes the effect of having a sniper. It does a raycast between the enemy and the player, and then it basically does a random number generator. And I think it's like, if there's like a 50% chance it'll hit you or it won't hit you, and it plays a different sound. So if it misses you, you get like a missing sound effect, like a kind of a whiz-by type thing.
Yeah.
Or if it hits you, you get a kind of a real kind of, I think I took a sound effect out of like, I don't know, Call of Duty or something just to test it out. But like a proper, bullet hole smashing into flesh type sound. And it worked really well. And it added such a lot to that little section of that level.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then I think you contacted me afterwards when I sort of shared some of that gameplay, and were like, man, that I need that for my game. So
I was working on Dark Skies at the time, really early alpha stage.
Yeah.
Must have been somewhere like around summer 2019.
Yeah, almost certainly probably was that long ago. And actually, when the first time I played Dark Skies, I remembered that encounter, and I was kind of like, oh, there it is. There's the sniper script. Yeah.
It was so. I had to have the script in my game, and still to this day, it's quite a huge part of the game. And
I think it just adds a different encounter. It's,
absolutely.
I think that's one of the downsides of Game Guru. I know a lot of people complain about the graphics and it looks rubbish, it doesn't look like a modern game or anything. But actually, I think if Game Guru was like a top trumps card, the graphics would actually be probably one of the strongest attributes of Game Guru, because compared to the gameplay options out of the box, I mean, you could say that Game Guru, graphically, it's probably equivalent to, let's say, Far Cry 2. So what's that, 2007, 2008?
Yeah,
but from a gameplay perspective, I mean, what do you like? Key finding, box stacking, like, honestly, we're talking about mechanics that would have been archaic in Quake 2 back in 1996.
Yeah.
So you have to find ways to add more interest, even if it's just like, so in Extraction Point, there is a section where you need to climb up on top of a house and you need to send a radio transmission. Now, in reality, what you're doing is you're asking the player to get on top of this building and press E. It's like the simplest thing ever. But because you wrap it up in that context and you build that backstory, it's like, it's not just pressing E. It's like you're sending a transmission to your comrades, and they're going to try and zero in on a location. They're going to try and find you. You build that extra kind of interest around these really simple actions. I think you have to do that with Game Guru, because it is quite limited unless you know how to script, which, I'm a very amateurish Lua scripter. So I can write the most basic stuff, but honestly, nothing major. So
yeah, but still 100 times better than me, and and a lot of depth to the gameplay can be added with sounds actually too. So my games mostly rely on sounds, if you think about it. And in that radio section you mentioned, you have added a nice sound as well. And I was just today I was looking at Ghost LL's video about your game. That was pretty cool to see it again.
I woke up this morning and saw that. I was like, wow, I have to watch that. He was very complimentary about Extraction Point. I mean, it's great to see other people enjoying that game so much. But it was made at a time before I knew much about. I mean, I was really just learning about Game Guru, and I didn't know much about optimization, and I didn't even really know that much about the engine at that point and what it could and couldn't take. I just naturally assumed, I've got this massive map. I'm sure I can fill it with a level, even if it's mostly just sort of, hills and desert and stuff. But as soon as I tried to do anything more complicated than that, and you may have seen, I put out some videos recently showing some of the unfinished levels from Extraction Point. And, they're a little bit more complex. There's more buildings and there's more sort of like architecture and things, and the levels just fell apart. Basically, they were they collapsed under their own weight because they were just too big. Game Guru just can't handle stuff of that size.
I know the feeling. I had to scrap quite a few levels from Dark Skies also, so I think I scrapped 3 or 4 levels or even 5 during the development. But Yeah.
Yeah, but you're a real master of that. I think, I've not played the most recent build of Dark Skies, and that's sort of still on my list, but I played a version probably about a year ago.
Mm.
And actually, no, I did record some footage for the documentary quite recently, so within the last sort of 3 months maybe.
Man, I
And
can't wait.
and yeah, playing it again, I think yeah, you're a real master of showing what can be done in Game Guru. Some of those maps are pretty massive, but so getting them to run at a decent frame rate must have been a real challenge. You
Yeah.
must have learned a lot about optimization.
Yeah. I was going to say about Extraction Point that this was your first project, and that's damn impressive. Like, it has that sense of polish that I think no other Game Guru game, not even mine, has. So that's very impressive.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, it is and it isn't. It's not my first game project for sure. I mean,
Mm.
I'd done other projects in FPS Creator, and not all of them, or most of them, didn't make it to release.
I remember Acid Factory.
Yes, yeah. So that's probably the only one that still exists, and even that doesn't run properly, or certainly not for me anyway.
Mm.
Yeah, Acid Factory was. We used to have these level design competitions, sort of once a month, and every month would be a different theme. And competitions like that are great for kind of focusing your creativity, because you could make a level about almost anything, but if you're given a unique stipulation that you have to kind of, or a theme or something you have to stick to. And actually, so the first version of Acid Factory didn't run very well actually, and it didn't win anything in the competition. I just kind of, maybe it came like 5th place or whatever. But I'd had to kind of rush it, and the build was rushed, and it hadn't light mapped properly. But I looked at it afterwards. I was like, there's something in here. There's like a gem of an idea in here. Like there's something unique about the way it looks and the way it feels. I'd like to try and develop this further. So I made it into a slightly more polished professional version, and I got my friend to kind of voice act in it. And that's the version which I think is kind of out there now. The version I've done sort of videos on. Yeah, so that was probably my kind of most recognizable and most polished FPS creator project. Most of the others, yeah, were just kind of small things. I did probably the first release I actually finished was it was literally just called Basic Training, and all it does is teach the player the basics of like an FPS game, like WASD to move, and this is how you shoot, and this is how you stack boxes, and it was just using the stock assets. But I said, this could be a cool like little, because it's made of stock assets, anyone can load it in FPS Creator. So here's the FPM file, and people can just kind of add it to the start of their game as a tutorial. And people will be like, oh, this is amazing. This is like, it doesn't necessarily have to be part of my story, but it can just teach the player something. And so I thought, yeah, that's kind of cool. And then there were other projects. There's a game I wish I still had, but I don't have it anymore. It was called Agent 10, and I think it was another one of these level design competitions. So you only get one level, and this was like a kind of a spy thriller game where you have to break into an office building, and you have to kind of avoid some security guards, and you have to kind of get some plans from a safe. And so like I think I did like a normal version of the game, and then I think I did like a 007 version with like music ripped out of like the Bond films, and like I'd done a little cinematic on the end of our character jumping out of a window, and I wish I still had that game, man. That was a lot of fun to work on, but again, lost to the dead hard drives and whatever. And FPSC was not a stable engine even back then, so there was even one competition I entered where the game wouldn't build, and I ended up having to screen record myself playing the level and submitting a video of me playing the level as my entry, and just saying, look, please look kindly upon this level that I've made. I know you can't actually play it, but here's what it looks like. FPSC just won't let me build it. I think I actually came like 3rd place in that competition.
Oh, wow.
But I can't remember what the level was about. I just know it was called Hidden Agenda, but yeah, I've never been able to find that level again. But yes, so after Acid Factory, I didn't really do a lot of FPSC after that. I kind of Acid Factory would have been 2009, and I got distracted doing filmmaking stuff. I essentially spent a year of my life making effectively a feature film, an hour and 10-minute film. And I was kind of balancing that up with my first year of university, and then that was a 3-year course, and then I was trying to get into working and stuff like that and get a proper job. So I didn't come back to Game Guru until 2017, and I had played a couple of games at the time from Game Guru to sort of see what it was about, what could be done. I'm pretty sure I played Redacted, which obviously you and I are both familiar with. Yeah, we're both good friends of Wolf, and his games consistently have been at such a high quality, both in FPSC and in Game Guru. So it was really cool to see him tackle that new engine. But I knew I had a track record of kind of starting projects and not finishing them. So I said, okay, if I'm going to make something in Game Guru, it needs to be like, I have to accept that I'm not going to be like a perfectionist about every little thing, and I'm going to use as much stock media as possible. So I looked at the stock media, and a lot of it is like desert kind of houses and those terrorist characters and modern weapons. And I was like, well, I'm not going to try and make a sci-fi game, am I? I'm going to try and make something that leans into the strengths of the engine, because it gives me a better chance of actually finishing it. And it still took me like probably a year to make that level from Extraction Point.
Okay, wow.
And the other ones that I never finished. And as I said, eventually my ambition was just too great for the engine to handle. But yeah, I learned a lot about game making in that level, and it still gets some good views on YouTube from the little playthrough I did, but also some good feedback.
Yeah, your video is viewed a lot, I think. Don't have the numbers right now, but I was looking at it recently and saw, wow, the views are quite insane. Awesome. And the project really deserves it. It's I remember being totally amazed back then. Like, this was all before the draw call optimizer was added.
Yeah.
So right now you would have had a much easier time with Game Guru to create extraction points. So
yeah, and I didn't understand how the engine worked. So I mean, Ghost pointed this out in his video today, but I light mapped it because that's what you did in FPSC. You had to light map a level if you wanted it, but then you also had the sun, which if you're outside is always on. So things like trees, you get dynamic shadows, but you also have my light map shadows. So that's taking up a whole portion of memory that didn't necessarily need to be there.
Yeah, it doesn't make the game slower, but it actually takes memory, and a light map level used to crash a lot more than just a normal level. I had to experience that myself as well.
Yeah. And I mean, light mapping has never been the strong suit of Game Guru. I think FPS Creator did it a lot better. And even now, the light mapper is very difficult to use. I mean, a lot of people say it's broken.
It is broken, I think, yeah.
It certainly doesn't run properly, put it that way. The main thing I have against the light mapper at the moment is the way the light maps are saved. There's a lot of like artifacting. You can see it. You can see, because lights are supposed to have kind of like a fall off, and as they graduate from light to dark, that's supposed to be quite a smooth transition from light to dark. But instead you can see all these patchy bands of like green and purple. It's like DDS artifacting. It's like highly compressed, and it just looks ugly. Just looks really, really ugly. And it's been that way ever since Lee did his fabled DirectX 11 improvements to the engine, should we say. So I actually think the DirectX 9 version of Game Guru looks better.
In terms of light mapping, absolutely, yeah.
But it doesn't run as quickly. That's the only thing, because now we've got the draw call optimizer. So
okay, so let's switch the topic a bit.
Sure.
You already mentioned it. You already mentioned a lot of questions I was going to ask. So we might repeat ourselves a bit here. So let's start to talk again about your movie work. You are doing this for a living, which I didn't know for quite a long time until just recently. So, for example, you have worked for Toyota once. That's
have I? Yes, that's on my show reel, isn't it?
Yeah,
what did I do for Toyota?
Was it an advertisement?
No, it wasn't. It was part of a corporate partnership that we did with. So I work for a charity, and I'm their senior video producer there. I started as just like as their first in-house videographer. So yeah, quick backstory on like Scott's journey into filmmaking. So there was always like a video camera present when I was a kid growing up. Like my dad bought a video camera, and it was just like a cassette camera type thing. And when I was 13, he was like, okay, I think you're responsible enough that you can like start filming family holidays and whatever. And so we took this camera abroad with us, and I learned how to use it. And I came back from that holiday, and I would have been 13 at the time, and I was just like, wow, I know how to use this amazing thing now. I can start making my own movies. So initially I didn't want to make like little films with just my friends and stuff. I wanted to make Star Wars and Indiana Jones and The Matrix and stuff like that. But of course, with no skills and no budget, I was like, well, how do I do that? Well, the obvious answer is I use toys. So I use Lego. So I used to do like not even stop motion, like even more rudimentary than that. I used to do these little like Lego movies. And then I started making short films, and gradually I kind of got into doing that, and I was doing video installation art, and I knew it was something I wanted to do for a living. It was just something I was incredibly passionate about. So I went to university and studied that, and then I came out of uni and I tried to get a job in the film industry, but it didn't really work. Where I live is it's not that close to London, but it's sort of close enough that most of the work gets kind of sucked into the city. So you'd have to move to the city to kind of get the work. And I think a little bit like the games industry, that the movie industry is quite exploitative, especially for people just starting out. And there's an expectation that you will work when you don't have any experience, that you'll work for no money, and you'll just work long hours for like just the exposure, or just to have like a credit on your show reel. And I was kind of broke at the time and living with my parents, and I was like, I can't afford to do that. And I didn't drive either. That was a big part of it, that it was difficult for me to travel around to do these things. So I worked in retail for a bit and just did the kind of filmmaking thing on the side, and started taking freelance jobs. And yeah, I think I can't remember specifically working for Toyota, but I think once I eventually did find a job as a video producer, one of our partnerships that we had as a charity was with Toyota. They supplied us with vehicles, so we did some stuff with them. But I've worked with a few other kind of big corporates like that, like Cathay Pacific. Had a really good shoot on an airline on Cathay Pacific. We didn't go anywhere; it was just parked up on the tarmac at Heathrow. But we got to film a cool video on board. And I'm a big plane geek, so I was like geeking out over it's a 777, all this sort of stuff. Cool. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey, and cool to kind of work with different players over the years.
Absolutely, yeah. Your website is pretty cool, so I was, of course, as part of my preparation for this podcast episode, I was looking at it, and I saw the Toyota logo, and I thought I have to ask you about this. So that's interesting. So how exactly did you, transform your hobby into an actual job?
I mean,
you mentioned about freelancing. Where do you get freelance contracts from, for example?
So there are websites you can go where you can kind of advertise your skills as a freelance videographer. Like Mandy.com is one. Some of these websites you have to sign up to and pay for, but because I was a broke graduate, I just used the free services. But I was also incredibly lucky in that I knew that you didn't need to go to university to become a filmmaker. You didn't need to, the degree itself isn't really worth much, other than the fact that it gives you the opportunity to kind of practice these skills. But you practice it in a very academic way sometimes, and the real world is not like that. But what's really useful about going to a film school is you make connections with other people. You have classmates and course mates and even tutors sometimes who they spot your potential, and you become friends, and suddenly you'll get a call 3 years later and they'll say, hey, do you fancy working on this? And a lot of the little freelance gigs I've done since university have come off of the back of those relationships. So I was good friends with some classmates at university who ended up starting their own production company, and one of them was Norwegian, based in Bergen, and the other one was based kind of on the south coast of England. And so they would both be kind of fishing for work where they lived. And so sometimes they would get jobs, sometimes they'd be in this country in England, but sometimes they'd be in Norway. So as they were kind of producers and not really kind of camera people, and that's sort of what I specialized in. I was a sort of cinematographer, camera operator.
Mm-hmm.
I was also an editor for them as well. So for their English language projects, I could edit. Obviously, I don't speak Norwegian, so there was no point in getting me to edit the Norwegian footage. But I could go out to Norway and shoot for them. So there actually ended up being a conflict of interest between my retail job and the freelance work was just starting to take off. And they said, oh, we've got this shoot out in Norway next week. Can you do it? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I'm not sure I can get the time off work.
Yeah.
And then I was just like, what are you doing? This is what you want to do for a living. Like, if you're really serious about it, you have to just kind of say, fuck it and do it. I'm sorry for the swear. You might have to beep that. I don't know.
Not at all. No.
So I made the decision to quit my job, and 24 hours later, I was in Bergen, ready to shoot my first corporate video in another country. And
that takes some balls, man. Awesome.
Yeah.
I really admire that. I work in retail myself, and I'm quite happy. It sucks sometimes, but I got great working colleagues. But to make that step into something completely risky at that time, I think for you. That takes guts. Really cool. Nice.
And this production company was these two friends that set it up. They both had full-time jobs, and really the production company was kind of like their side project. And so when they picked me up to take me to the airport the next day, and I was kind of like, yeah, I quit my job to come on this shoot. They were like, oh my God, what have you done? Like, how are you going to do it? And I was like, no, but it's fine, because like I will focus on, this project is now my project as much as it is yours. So I'll start looking for work around my hometown.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, like the freelance stuff didn't really work out so well for me because I didn't drive, and I don't know, I'm a little bit introverted, so it's difficult for me to put myself out there. It was only in the last sort of the last little bit of it that I started going to things like networking events, which are full of like sole traders like me who are just kind of starting their own businesses. So they've not got much money. So for me to come in and say, how would you like to spend £1,000 hiring me to make a full, suite of videos for your social media? That's more than they're willing to part with, really. So, and I really did come close to giving up on filmmaking altogether, because I just thought, by this point it's 2016. I'm thinking, wow, like I'm going to be 25 this year, and I haven't made a living out of it. I'm still living with my parents, and I just, maybe there just isn't any money to be made in it. But then a job came up, a full-time job working for this charity as their in-house video producer, and it was just kind of making videos for YouTube. And I thought, well, this is perfect. This is like what I do on a day-to-day basis.
Awesome.
So I just needed that, I just needed someone to give me a chance, basically. And once they did that, I think that really helped, and that gave me a lot of confidence. But yeah, I just stuck at it, and I did filmmaking in my spare time. I did it, to get paid for it. I just tried to find any avenue I could, and tried to find ways to kind of learn something new with every project. That's something I still do now. Like, there's a lot of repetition in the type of work I do. But you try and find something new in every project you do, a new skill you can learn, or a new technique you can try out, or a new subject you can explore.
Absolutely. I get that too with my game projects. So yeah, like with the contest games, they have been so important for me. I was telling this in the last episode also. Like I made a really silly SCP style game. And the scripts I have written or used for that game are now in Dark Skies as well. So it builds up your own knowledge, and then you can profit from that later.
Yeah, definitely.
That's
yeah, absolutely.
Really cool. Yeah. So what was your favorite video project out of these all?
Oh man, that's like picking between children. It's really difficult. I mean, I've made so many different things over the years, both for work and for myself. I mean, the biggest achievement probably was this. I mentioned it earlier. I call it my feature film. It's not quite feature length. It's an hour and 10 minutes long, but by some definitions say that is feature length. But so the last film I made before I went to university, this was the plan. I wanted to make a film that kind of put everything I knew up to that point into one project. I knew I was going to have quite a long summer between finishing college and going off to university, so I wanted to write something with like a 3-act structure, and I was going to kind of put all of the filmmaking techniques into it and really kind of use it as an opportunity, as like a statement of intent. Like, this is where I am right now, and then we'll see how I am in 3 years' time when I've done my degree. And that project ended up taking a year, or more than a year, in fact, to complete. It was called Roulette. It's a teen gambling thriller. And yeah, I mean, I went through a long period where I thought I'm never going to finish this because, you know, I'm at uni and I'm really busy. And also, like, when you learn how to do this stuff properly, you start looking at your own work. And I don't know about you, but I become super critical about the stuff I've done. And I started to doubt myself. Like, I could see the mistakes I'd made, and I was like, these weren't kind of filming mistakes necessarily. This is like really fundamental stuff, like with the story and the script, things that can't be changed. You know, you've gone down that path. And I was like, is there any point in me even finishing this film? But I thought, you know what, like, I got all my friends to act in it. I spent a little bit of money kind of putting it together. I've spent so much time organizing it. Like, all these people have helped me so much to kind of get this far. I really need to see it through for them, like, so they have a return on their investment. So I finished that film, and yeah, I mean, it was, I think it's gone on to have a second life on YouTube. I mean, it's actually one of my most watched videos, which I find crazy because it's just this silly little film that I made with terrible dialogue and my friends acting in it. But, you know, people watch it, and
I really gotta watch it.
yeah, well, I mean, it's a bit cringeworthy, and I went through a big stage where, like, I kind of hated the film a little bit because I was like, it's really cringe, really, when you look at it now. But then, like, you know, a few years later, you kind of come out the other side of it, and you go, yeah, but think about it. You were 17 when you wrote the script, and you actually stuck with the project for a whole year. Like, that's got to mean something. So, like, in job interviews and stuff, I'll refer back to Roulette as a time that I really stuck with a project for like an extended period of time, because it's a different mentality. Like, I think doing a short video or something, you know, I can get really kind of enthusiastic about it and bang it out in like a week or two. But there's a different mindset you have to approach such a long project like that with. You really have to kind of break it down into individual challenges. I think if you looked at the scale of the project in front of you, you might just kind of be defeated before you even began. You'd just be like, oh my God, there's so much to do. I don't stand any chance of ever doing this. You know, it's going to take me years. But you don't, you know, you learn to not approach the project like that. You just break it down and say, look, even if I only do half an hour's work on it today, if I just get this one task done, that's sort of like inched forward the progress bar just a little bit on the project. And I've kind of relearned that skill most recently with the documentary, because that has taken ages to put together. But, you know, you can't focus on, oh my God, I've got all these people asking me for it, and it's taken a year to make. You just have to go, no, actually, today's problem is I need to find a screenshot from 2005 of a newsletter that claimed that the release date for FPS Creator was going to be in February when actually it was in September. I just need that, even though that's only going to be in the film for like 2 seconds. Sure, okay, but that's 2 seconds extra you've added to the film that day. And some days you'll add 2 minutes, but some days it will literally just be 2 seconds. And you just inch it forward piece by piece. I think there's a quote, and I don't know how accurate this is, and I'm not sure I can attribute this directly to him, but I'm pretty sure Will Smith tells a story about how when he was a kid, his uncle asked him and maybe his brother or something, or his cousin, to build a wall. And they looked at it and they were like, we can't build a wall, like, we're kids, you know, how are we going to do, like, that's such a massive thing, this thing's got to be like 8 foot high and 14 foot wide. And the uncle was just like, look, don't focus on building the wall, just focus on laying one brick as perfectly as you can. And that's kind of how I approach long projects like that. Just focus on that one brick and just making it as perfect as you can, and then move on to the next thing and lay that as perfectly as you can. And over the, you know, it's cumulative, it builds up, and suddenly you end up with an hour and 20-minute film.
It's so funny because for me this is totally the opposite. So first of all, I just let you talk here. When it comes to looking back to old projects, like with your movie you made, it reminded me about Hunted, you know. That's the main reason I started this remake sort of project, which I didn't touch in quite a long time now. But back then, this was so huge for me, and now looking back to it, it's sort of, I get that cringe vibe also a bit, because, you know, it's many stock assets and the colors, and this doesn't sit well with me today. But yeah, I get that of like you are sort of proud of it still for being at that time, and the skill set I had at this time.
I mean, it was a 10-year journey for me to learn to love roulette again. So, like, I think you may still be in the early days of that. You know, it's like it kind of curves down for a bit, and you get to a point where you kind of hate it and you can't watch it, and then it comes up on the other side again, and you realize, well, actually, considering where I was at the time, and obviously you'd make it totally different now, and you've learned so much. But the fact that you finished it, you learned so much by finishing it. I think that's
that too,
that's a really important takeaway.
Even simple stuff like uploading a game to Steam. That's I know that Bugsy wanted to upload a game on Steam as well, and we were writing about this, but he didn't make it because it's so complicated. It's like you have to have a degree for this. Until years later, I found out that there's a tool that simply does this for you. Like,
really?
you press one button almost. Yeah. So I also wanted to say about the mentality of placing one brick at a time. That's totally different for me when it comes to Dark Skies. So I make one level, then I have a 3-month break, or maybe 2 months, and then I come back and make 2 levels, another huge break, 3 levels, much bigger chunks, I think, but in such a short time. Like, I made the last 30% of Dark Skies in 1 week. And
yeah,
that's
crazy.
I still don't know how, I had so many ideas when I had my vacation week, the week off. It was totally insane. Like, I was telling to Wolf on the podcast episode, I had no idea how I would finish the game, just some vague ideas. And then 1 week later, boom, it's done. So that was totally crazy, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely different ways of going about it. Maybe I should try your approach, and I should try kind of...
No, I'm not saying that yours is wrong, but, I admire the spirit of doing things with intention. I'm really intuitive, and I don't have a plan most of the time, and somehow it still works out, So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm a relentless overthinker, and everything has to be planned out in advance, I think. Or in some aspects, maybe not everything, but I like to go in with a plan. Even if I don't stick to the plan, I like to have at least made a plan. And so this is why, like, I'm terrible at recording pieces to camera where I have to deliver, like, where I have to talk about something, because I ramble about stuff, and there's messages that I want to get across, but it all comes out jumbled. I find it much easier to sit in front of Word and write a script and then do it as voiceover. I find I'm more concise, I'm more considered, and so that's kind of the style I tend to adopt for more of my videos going forward. And there's also, like, I don't necessarily want to be the face of my videos. I always wanted the content to speak for itself rather than me.
Yeah,
so
I feel that, yeah.
And I mean, you don't record yourself either when you do your videos. You're like a voice, just kind of speaking over gameplay footage, and the same principle for me, really. I mean, there's other practical concerns as well. Like, the room that I'm in at the moment is not, like, aesthetically pleasing at all. Like, it doesn't look like a typical gamer's room, that's for sure. So I wouldn't want to put a webcam up and kind of film my reaction for me sort of playing, because FPS Creator Classics. So this is my series where I kind of play old FPS creator games. I could have done that as like a typical sort of, let's play type thing where, top left corner, there's a little thumbnail of me playing along and you get to see my facial expression. But I don't really want it to be about that. It's not about Avenging Eagle or Tanner Productions plays these games. It's about, look at these games and, can I share any insight on them from my sort of, from my time using that engine.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think I love your videos, really. And your videos about Game Guru and, all stuff related to that are probably the best ones out there. So, like, the interview with Lee was totally awesome. I think I watched it 10 times since.
Yeah.
Even, sometimes when I build levels, I just like to listen to something, in the background. And I found myself watching your videos quite sometimes. So
Yeah, well, I mean, I make them to be watched. I want to find an audience, so it's yeah, it's good to hear that they hit the mark.
and they are definitely informative as well. So I'd like to share information as well in my videos. And I always like, they are entertaining, but also you learn something from it. So that's
Yeah,
really important and quite a
yeah,
challenge too. So not everyone can do
yeah,
that.
that is important to me. I've always wanted to try and share my knowledge with people. I mean, even in those early days of FPS Creator, somewhere out there is a video tutorial that I made, a 4-part video tutorial on how to model an asset and get it into FPSC. And I made it, probably within the first year. So I would have been 13, 14. So you can imagine me with like a really high sort of like kid voice saying, "Hi, I'm Avenging Eagle, and this is how you get a pot into FPSC." And it was like a modeling tutorial on how to use Animator and how to texture it and how to get it into FPSC. I mean, yeah, I like sharing knowledge, and that's a really big part of our community as well. The FPS creator and Game Guru community, sharing knowledge is like is really important to us, and I think it's one of the reasons why we're such a strong community. Is that we're all willing to help each other.
Absolutely.
Like I can't believe. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of novices in the community that have never made games before, so I feel like we kind of owe it to them to sort of give some of that knowledge out. So that's why I'll spend hours writing stuff like my texture optimization tutorial on the forums, because that sort of knowledge just isn't out there, and yet it's fundamental to making a working Game Guru game or FPS creator game, and people just aren't aware of it. And TGC aren't going to take the time to write that. In fact, sometimes I think TGC aren't even aware of this sort of stuff. I don't think they realize that texture optimization is even a thing.
I think Lee never made a game with his own engine.
No, I don't think he did. And I've actually suggested that they do that, but obviously it's really difficult because they're such a small team, and if you've ever played like the developer mode of Half-Life 2, with those little spinning speech bubble icons, they reveal so much about the process of making the game and how they had to change the source engine to actually get it to work properly. But that's the point, right? They developed the source engine around the needs of the game. And I don't think that TGC, they don't have the resource to do it, but in a way, I kind of wish that they would try and make a game, and not just like a one-level demo thing, like the Cellar demo or something, although I know that's partly your handiwork as well. But yeah, I mean, the levels that Lee has put together are really quite short, and they don't stress the engine out. And when he's asking for bugs, he's saying, I need to be able to replicate this with stock media. And I'm like, well, what's the point? Like everyone who cares about their game is going to want to use non-stock media. Otherwise, it's going to look like every other game. So yeah, I do think there would be a lot of advantages to them trying to make a proper game, even just like 2 or 3 levels, just something that they could string together. They would learn a lot about their own engine, I think, from trying to do that.
Yeah. So it's down to us to make those huge ass projects, I think, and then report the bugs on GitHub.
Yeah.
So we were talking about your interview with Lee. So what was it like to be at Lee's office? How was it to be in personal contact with him?
Oh my God. Okay. So funny. So I'd been thinking about making a video about the game creators for a while, because again, like having been a member of the community for quite a while, I thought I could share some good insight on their history, and particularly because I knew that Game Guru Max had received a bit of a mixed reaction, and originally I was just thinking, okay, I can make a video about how we arrived at this point where we are now with Game Guru Max, but I knew it was going to be a big project. I knew that there was a lot of history to get through, and I wasn't sure if I really had the capacity to take on such a big project. And then it was actually the game creators that contacted me, and they initially asked, would you like to play or use Game Guru Max and do a review of it? We would also consider potentially if you wanted to do an interview with Lee. And so I thought, well, this is perfect. I can actually, I'm not bothered about playing Game Guru Max really, in its sort of unfinished state. But I would love to do an interview with Lee and kind of learn more about him.
That's so funny.
because
Yeah, they were reaching out to me as well, but this was like a year ago or even a bit more, and I was
yeah,
nowhere near that confident to talk with them. You know, it took me like 1 year talking to TGC in personal and quite some community members to be at this point where
really,
I would trust myself and I'm confident enough to do this. Yeah, but
wow.
it's so cool that they reached out to you as well and that it led to this. That's awesome.
That they actually phoned me because, of course, my phone number and contact details are on my website, in case I want to pick up
Ah,
any freelance video projects.
yeah.
So they called me, and I think it was a member of the team that doesn't work there anymore now, but they wanted to try and put together this, this project, and I thought I can use this to my advantage because I was very clear from the beginning that if I was going to do a history of the game creators type thing, it needed to kind of be quite a balanced view. I
Yeah.
didn't want to bash the game creators completely, because there's enough videos out there that slate Game Guru and FPS Creator,
Yeah.
and then they're often made by people that they haven't really tried to use the engine. They've just taken a quick look at it and they've never really delved into it.
Yeah.
And it also completely ignores all of the really great work that goes on in the community. We're the ones that kind of keep these engines running with our projects. So it had to show both the positives and the negatives. So I explained my concept to them. I said, look, I will create this video for you for Game Guru Max because at that time it was about to go into early access, and they needed it by a specific date. I said, but I would also like to ask all these other questions because I'd like to make a longer project about the history of the game creators and their products. So they said, okay, yeah, that's fine. You can go and film Lee in person. He's up for it. And I was like, oh my God. So I had like just a couple of weeks to prepare, and
Oh wow. Okay.
it was very kind of rushed. And I felt like I had to write a script for the entire documentary as research almost, and then kind of go to Lee not with the script as such, but with questions that would support that. So I had a very kind of compressed pre-production period where I was researching when certain products came out, and I built a timeline, basically a kind of a big spreadsheet of, okay, this is when this came out and here's what event was happening, because the timing of things matter, because certain projects were running at the same time as others, and certain products are being developed when others were also being developed. So I just had to try and get it straight in my mind. And then I wrote 2 pages worth of questions, and we came to an agreement where I was going to go out to Wales, where Lee lives, which is he doesn't live near me at all. He lives sort of 4.5 hours away. It's a long drive.
Oh, okay.
And I stayed overnight in a hotel, and yeah, went and visited him at his home. His office, I can tell you, was incredibly small. It's very cramped. In fact, it's so cramped that there was enough space to sit Lee in there and get a camera with like on a tripod, but I had to sit in the hallway.
Oh my!
To ask my questions. And in fact, I actually said to Lee, look, I can't actually see you very well from where I'm sat, so I'm gonna I had a little bit of, like, I call it camera tape. It's like 1-inch cloth tape. Made a little X, and I stuck it just to the left of the camera and said, this is your eye line. This is your face. You're going to look at this when you're answering the questions and pretend it's me, because I can't see you.
That's awesome. Wow.
So, and he was great with it. Honestly, I mean, obviously it's not his first interview, but he was really good with it. And yeah, we just started, and I asked him all sorts of questions. We were going for 2.5 hours, I think.
Wow.
We went for long enough that the one of my lights died, and I also bought a second camera with me to capture like an alternate angle. That ran out of battery as well. So I literally filmed until everything had just died, because there was such great insight out of there.
Yeah.
And the weirdest thing was, so we finished the filming, it all gone really well. We were both completely exhausted. And I was packing up all my gear, and we were having a little kind of informal chat. And I just happened to mention, like, because he was talking about Game Guru Max, and I was kind of like, talking about my Game Guru projects. And I just happened to mention something about Ignite. And he was like, wait, what? You made Ignite? And I was like, yeah, me and Armin Moses made Ignite. And he was like, oh my God, I had no idea I was in the presence of the guy that made it. And he like started fanboying over the
Yeah.
fact that I was like right there in the room with him. And I was
Oh,
like,
that's
yeah, man.
awesome.
Like, so he was aware of Ignite, and he was really impressed with it. And I had to kind of explain all the little workarounds we had to do to get around, certain problems we faced with it. And yeah, he was amazed. But I think that's a running theme with Lee, and that's part of that comes out in the documentary, I think, is that the community pushes the engine in ways that Lee hasn't thought about or ever considered.
Yeah.
Because he's one guy, he can't think of everything.
Yeah.
And we're very ambitious people, very creative, ambitious people. So it can never be all things to all people.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So it will always be pushed in different directions. But yeah, it was a really surreal experience finally meeting this man that I'd seen so much of and learned so much about. And yeah, but he's a really nice chap, and I was so grateful that he was able to give up so much of his time for me to film this interview with him.
Yeah, that's awesome. I would have loved to hear the conversation with you and him about Ignite. That must have been awesome for you.
Yeah,
I know that he follows, the people, and he knows my game as well. He even watched a full playthrough of my game, Dark Skies. It was like a 2-hour video. I was talking to him personally in April last year, and he really likes my stuff also. So that was a really feel good moment for me. That was very, very cool.
Yeah, well, I mean, so he should, because I mean, your stuff is awesome, and Wolf's stuff is awesome, and we've got lots of community members that have produced some really cool stuff, and I don't necessarily think that TGC does enough to promote the great work that goes on in the community.
Yeah. By the way, I also mentioned
people.
this as well to them, and the answer basically was, let us know, and we will then write a newsletter about them. So that was the time where some guys like Maya, Maya Coimbra and C4Ever08, they got their own newsletter feature, and yeah, so what would you think they could do to support us more in that regard?
Well, the newsletter only goes out to the existing community, right? So that's, I mean, it's great that other members of the community find out about what people are working on. I mean, I've been featured in the Game Creators newsletter for Ignite, I think. But that only gets out to a small audience. And I think if you really want to show what the engine is capable of, it needs to be part of the marketing for the engine. They need to be able to... I think for Game Guru, they created a little showcase section of the website where you could play a couple of games on there. And in fact, we mentioned it earlier, Extraction Point. I think that ended up going on that showcase section of the website, which is great. But it's one of maybe 5 games that's up on that part of the website, and I just think they could do so much more to highlight the work that is done in the community, and push it out to I mean, they could do it on their YouTube channel. They could do playthroughs of games made with Game Guru and say, oh wow, that's really cool what they've done there. And yeah, so potentially that would be a way to kind of highlight it.
Yeah, your documentary about TGC and their products has been in the works for like a year now, I think.
Yeah. More than a year, really, because as I say, they contacted me in January of last year, and yeah, pretty much.
Wow.
I mean, there were some distractions along the way. I got involved in other projects, some Game Guru, some not, but yeah, it's taken over a year to bring it to fruition. It's ended up a lot longer than I originally thought it would be. It's an hour and 20 minutes long.
Awesome.
So yeah, that is feature length.
And people can't wait to see it. Like myself, I had to swap the shift with my working colleague because my boss didn't, gave me the day off next Friday, but I will be there live.
Fantastic. Yeah, well, apparently so will Lee. I contacted the game creators to run a section of the film past them. One of the interviewees had specifically asked that TGC get the final say on whether or not this can go in the film. So I showed it to them, and they said, yeah, this is all fine. And I let them know, like, my plan is to release it on the 24th of March, 7 p.m. on my YouTube channel. And he was like, great, I'll bring the popcorn. So yeah, I mean, it would be great to see Lee in the chat. We'll see if he turns up. I think they probably will watch it at some point. They may not watch it on the day.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the support I've had for making this documentary has really surprised me, because I think of it as being a very niche topic that doesn't mean a lot to a lot of people.
Yeah.
You know, because I try and explain it to my sort of friends and family, and they're kind of like, what a strange subject to make a documentary about, especially one that's like an hour and 20 minutes long as well, that's taken like a year to make. But after people saw that interview with Lee, ever since then they've been asking, you know, because I deliberately left it on a cliffhanger to generate interest, so you know, that's just me being a good editor. But I didn't, you know, I expected that I'd probably get it done like 2 months later, but it's taken a whole year. And there's been a lot of people saying, when's it coming out? When's it coming out? I really want to see the answer to that question. I really want to see Lee answer the question of, are you disappointed that no one's been able to make a decent game in Game Guru?
Yeah. Almost nobody was the
Almost
quote.
nobody. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, next to no, well, exactly, because people like you have obviously made fantastic games in Game Guru, but almost no one has been able to create and release a proper game in Game Guru.
That cliffhanger was so great. Like, I think I posted a comment like a few days ago, like in quotes, "coming soon" with a laughing smiley.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. Yeah.
That basically sums it up pretty well.
Yeah.
But people are so hyped up for it, and I'm so excited as well. You know, when you uploaded the trailer, I was watching that 10 times in a row.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I had to build hype somehow. I had to let people know that this film that I've been talking about for ages and mentioning in sort of other videos that I've done over the last year, that it's finally done. And I wanted to announce a release date. I really want to try playing with this. Let's make it an event. You know, I've put such a lot of time and effort into it. I'd love to get, because the game creators, as we've just discussed, is all about the community. So YouTube has some really nice options for being able to kind of premiere videos and have kind of live chats and stuff going on. So let's, you know, lean into that side of it and have a little kind of watch party, or our own little community watching the film all at the same time. I think that would be a really nice experience. So I'll be there in the chat and on the 24th. And yeah, I'm really interested to see what people think. I think the big test is going to be, will someone who's not massively familiar with Game Guru and FPS Creator still be able to kind of find it enjoyable? I have reason to believe that they will, because I've shown it to my dad, who has no interest in gaming or anything like that. And he loved it. He was gripped by it. I think possibly I've had to skip over some of the really technical details. I think it can be really tempting for people like you and me who know these engines really well to get into the specifics. And I know T-Bone asked a question recently, or he made a comment. He was like, "Oh, I really hope it deals with, like, why did they spend 3 months working on a jetpack for Game Guru and they didn't develop a swimming mechanic?" To be honest, like, I'll say right now that question specifically does not get answered. Because it's a bit too technical. You know, it's a very minute detail. However, what it you know, relates to is the misallocated resource potentially during the development of Game Guru, and the time spent not finishing features, or the lack of time spent finishing features. And we touched on this already in the Lee interview last year. You know, I think Lee even said in that video, you know, I have been accused of it's good enoughness. And I think, you know, questions like that around specific mechanics, you know, they all relate to that. You know, why is it that, you know, the easy building editor is not as fun or as you know, full featured to use as FPS Creator, despite the fact that FPS Creator was built 10 years before? You know, why is the character creator, I mean, let's be honest, the character creator is pretty awful. Like, if you know, heads separating away from bodies, and, you know, very limited customization, and you know, why was it left in that state? Why was PBR not fully implemented? You know, it was kind of half baked but never fully finished. And getting the chance to ask those questions directly to Lee was a really interesting experience. And also, the big thing about the documentary, which obviously the interview didn't have from last year, I've got all those community voices. You know, as you've already said, you feature in it, and I've spoken to several other members of the community, long-standing members of the community, and got their perspective on it as well. And I mean, there was almost a temptation to add too many voices to it because everyone has their own opinion.
Yeah.
But I think you get a real mix of different opinions in there, both positive and negative, and that's really good because that was the whole point. The point was to create a film that it highlights their shortcomings, but it also shows, you know, that there's obviously something in this software. That's why we all use it. There's something really fun about the software, despite all of the issues we have with it. And there's something really attractive about the community that keeps us coming back. So I've really explored those themes as well. And it goes off in some interesting tangents as well. Like, I don't think people are expecting it to start as early as it does in the timeline of things. So I won't reveal too much of that, but yeah.
And maybe, you know, I wanted to do this later, but it may be the right time to tease the listeners now a bit with a little preview you sent me, I think a few days ago, about your documentary. So let's listen to it.
And so I had this crazy idea, I'm going to write my own software. I thought, well, I'll sell it, I'll publish it myself then. That's the kind of person I was back then. So I made a website. I learned how to make a website, then made the website, then put the software on the website and started selling it. And I was selling like 1 or 2 a week. And I had to make the CDs and the boxes, and I had to learn all that as well. I didn't have any costs, no responsibilities, but I had a piece of software. It was called Dirt Basic.
Lee's first product, Dark Basic, is a simple yet powerful programming language and IDE editor. It proves an accessible option for novice programmers, giving rise to a range of games across different genres.
That's very, very first print of Dirt Basic, back in the day when we had CD-ROMs. In fact, that's even dated 13th of the 12th, 1999. Beta 7. That takes me back. That probably still works too. If you take it out and put it in the computer, it'll probably run.
And that's how, you know, how long your documentary goes back to Dark Basic. That's insane.
Oh, it goes further. It goes further back than that. You don't even know the half of it.
Oh,
but,
wow.
But there is a reason for it. Like, it doesn't just go back for the sake of going back. So, yeah, it actually it goes back as far as 1994.
Wow.
Which is Lee's first ever software programming job. And the reason for that, without giving too much away, because, you know, this is the opening 5 minutes of the documentary, so it's not really a spoiler as such, but there's a feature in a piece of software that Lee worked on back then that he has basically ported directly into Game Guru Max. It's a headline feature of Game Guru Max, and it was something present in this old piece of software.
Awesome.
But that's how deep the rabbit hole goes, and that's part of why it took me so long to make this film. Was you know, every time you think you've got the truth and the story, you actually realize, oh, hang on, there's this whole other thing that was going on at the same time. It would have been very easy for me to take this documentary and make it sort of 2 hours or 3 hours long, but I think to be relevant, I think I had to kind of keep it to their kind of non-coding products, because it focuses more on Game Guru Max and the journey that's led us to that point. So some of their other products, like kind of App Game Kit, I didn't include a huge amount on that, simply because I'm not a part of that bit of the community. And I can't speak about it with any authority, really. But I know that there's been some really cool stuff made with App Game Kit and Dark Basic and Dark Basic Professional. But in the interest of, you know, making it not a 3-hour film, I had to try and limit it a little bit. But I do still think it will be really interesting for people from those parts of the community as well, because, you know, it deals with TGC as a whole as well. So, yeah, but it was really interesting kind of looking back on some of these old games made in their previous game makers. Like, I had to get games from Dark Basic to run, stuff that was made in 2000, 2001. This,
Wow.
really challenging stuff. So it took a long time to research those sections of the film, but also a long time to actually just get the technology working and actually get those games running. So
awesome. And I can't, I didn't even see it, but it's such a big thing for the whole community, and I'm really glad that you did it. And it is done right now, isn't it?
It is finished. Yeah.
Awesome.
It's currently going through a process called clearing or whitelisting. I made the decision to use copyrighted music on the film, but I went after synthwave music from synthwave musicians that I particularly like, simply because I'm a big fan of the genre, and I felt like the electronic music kind of lended itself to the subject matter.
Yeah, it fits perfectly. Yeah, it also gives the whole film such a chill and cool vibe. I love that really much, so that's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. And I used a little bit of it on the interview with Lee, and it's kind of developing that on from there. But and obviously, in order to use all that stuff, I've had to contact all the musicians and contact their labels in some parts as well. So that's been probably one of the biggest headaches. Actually, has been finding and approving music for this project, and I will actually be releasing a Spotify playlist with the soundtrack to the film, so if you want to kind of listen to that afterwards, just to shed a little more light on those artists, because some of them are reasonably well known for their synthwave stuff, but some are less well known and are just sort of little gems that I've discovered trawling the internet or on Spotify late one night or whatever. So yeah, so I'm quite pleased with the soundtrack on this, but it's definitely given me a few grey hairs trying to get the music cleared.
I'm also going to share a little side fact. Almost nobody does know this, but do you remember the music I had for the Dark Skies trailers?
I don't remember the music you have for the Dark Skies trailers, no.
I don't have the audio right here, right at the moment, but so I contacted a Finnish singer. She was in the German charts even back then, like in 2005, I think. And I contacted her. She has a YouTube channel, and I found a really cool song that I thought fitted perfectly with the style of my game. So it has that despair and a little bit of a sad touch. And I contacted her, and then I had to deal with Warner Music Finland, I think. Finland, yeah. And they were really polite and totally easy to deal with. That was pretty cool. So,
oh, you were lucky.
Yeah,
that sounds like a really good experience. I've met a lot of silence, and I've met demands for money. Like, and I don't mind paying for music, obviously, but like excessive amounts of money, considering what we're talking about here is a YouTube video.
Yeah.
But I want to monetize the video. That's what makes it complicated. If you want to use it in a commercial setting, and I'm under no illusions. I'm sure the TGC Doc will not earn huge amounts of money, but it would be nice to earn a little bit back for the year that it's taken me to make.
Yeah.
But that always complicates things. And some artists, particularly if they're self-published, it's so much easier because you don't have to deal with a label. But when there's a label trying to skim as much money as they can out of anyone that wants to use the music, it can get quite challenging. So yeah, it has honestly been one of the banes in my life for the last few months, trying to get a soundtrack together. But I've got it together, and it's all ready to go, and it's 17 different tracks. So it's a long film. So and I barely even had to dip my hand into the royalty-free area of music libraries. So yeah, I'm looking forward to people listening to the film as well as watching it.
Yeah, awesome. So now we are getting to my favorite part. I've been busy again, so I've been asking quite a lot of people about opinions of you, and I'm really happy because this is such a cool thing for the episode itself. And not everyone did make it, unfortunately, but I got quite a few, and we will start with Ghost LOL.
Avenging Eagle. Honestly, I don't know a lot about him, but hopefully it will change after listening to this podcast. What I know for sure, he made really awesome extraction point demo, and I coincidentally replayed it literally 2 days ago, so I'm fresh out of the desert battleground. And obviously he's a super talented pro filmmaker and in general very cool guy to be around.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah. No. Yeah. Thank you.
So the next one is from Maverick 1981, and here it is.
Scott's one of those guys that when you first join the Game Guru community, he's one of the guys you look up to. He's one of the old brigade, and when you see his projects like Extraction Point and particularly with Ignite, which resonates with my love of all things medieval and fantasy, his work is really, really inspiring. And that's one of the reasons I'm looking so much forward to his documentary, and hopefully lift the lid a little bit on some of the things we've all wanted to ask TGC in the past.
Wow. Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Maverick. Yeah, your fantasy stuff, your environments are really cool, and I love seeing the stuff that you create. So I'm glad that Ignite resonates with you, and yeah, I wish I'd been able to kind of carry that project on a bit further.
Yeah, I also think it's a really cool project, but I totally understand your thoughts when, the burden of adding gameplay to such a project is so big. Dark Skies, I really took the easy way with just making a shooter with Game Guru, That's the one thing Game Guru does sort of decently right off the box,
Well, that's funny you should say that, because I've always thought that the AI in Game Guru kind of sucked. So my approach was, let's get rid of all enemies.
Yeah.
So that was where that's where Ignite came from. But maybe we can talk about that in a bit more detail later on. But yeah.
Also, I want to mention the video you made about Ignite. The way you explain all these processes, like the fire decal, that's amazing. Like, it's so interesting and inspiring to see this, and the way you explain the things, and it's so well made, those videos. You could sell even a piss poor like Game Guru acid flip and make it look like $1,000. So that's awesome, really.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Well, I mean, my dad is an engineer, so I've always grown up with that, or electronic engineer. So I've always grown up with that kind of problem-solving mentality. But I went more down the creative route. So yeah, I always come up with creative solutions to problems. I think that's probably one of my great strengths. Is if I'm presented with a challenge, I will normally come up with some random bonkers way of solving it. And the Ignite really pushed me to think outside of the box. But it's important to note that it wasn't just me. I had tremendous amounts of help from Armin Moses, who is, of course, another pillar of the community.
Yeah.
Yeah, we wouldn't have been able to get as far as we did with with any of the collaborations that we've done, both with Ignite and we haven't even touched on Cineguru yet. But yeah, again, members of the community helping each other out. That's what makes this community so great. So yeah.
Absolutely. So here's the next one from C4Ever08.
Hello, my name is C4Ever08, and I'm here to talk a little bit about Avenging Eagle. Now, I know me and him don't know each other that well other than being on the same Discords together. But I will say, I respect the guy. I respect him because he's very good at what he does with video production and editing. And he's a very all-around nice guy. Now, I've bought Cineguru from him and Amen Moses. And gotta say, he's probably the best cutscene editor ever in GGC. And I use it to this day with every project I make. I also gotta say, I'm getting so ready to see this new documentary coming out from him, and I hope it goes well for him and everyone else. And I think this video will shed light on a lot of questions that were needed to be answered years ago.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Oh well, yeah. Again, all great comments. I'm not good at taking praise, but it's lovely to hear voices that I know so well in the community. And he was your first podcast interviewee, wasn't he? C
Mhm.
Forever.
Yeah.
You had some really great insights, and his work on I can't say it, Anthropocene epoch.
I'm glad I'm not the only one. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. It's difficult for native speakers as well as foreigners as well. But yeah, I mean, his work completely blows me away. Like, it doesn't even look like a Game Guru level anymore. It's he's pushing the engine in ways that and it's such a unique vision as well. He's got such a unique artistic style, I think. And
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You'll find that a lot with the really standout games from Game Guru, is they have that unique look and feel to them. And his games definitely have that, and I respect him tremendously for bringing that to Game Guru.
And I enjoy, sometimes I enjoy playing Game Guru games more than actual games, in quotes, of course, because it's so interesting to explore, new assets maybe, and how things are done, how the levels are built, and how certain scripting has been done. And
yeah, I think it's like a magician looking at another magician's trick.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah,
and it's like, you know how to do some magic yourself, but it's like suddenly you'll watch a trick, and it's like, Penn and Teller, that show where you had to kind of I can't think what the name of it is, but you had to kind of fool them. And they'd get these people to come on stage and perform a magic trick, and Penn and Teller would have to try and guess how the magic trick was done.
Yeah.
And sometimes they would just be completely stunned, and they would be like, "Look, we've been working in the industry for years, and we do not know how you managed to do this trick. We've never seen it done like that before." I think that's the appeal for people like us who have worked in these engines, is seeing new approaches to problems and assets used in different ways. And yeah,
absolutely. All right, here's the next opinion, and here it comes.
It's T-Bone here, and I would just like to say a few words about Avenging Eagle, more so adding on to what I said in the previous podcast, where I said he's talented and professional. He's also very supportive in the community. He's built a really cool tool which allows people to add cinematics to their game. He's also a pretty good 3D modeler, I've noticed as well. So and also on top of that, he's a good level designer. I'm really looking forward to, and I really hope it becomes a real game, Ignite, because I really like the style, the theme, the concept, and the way he was able to integrate, again, like his film background and production background, and take like real fire and put it on the flame of a candle that's in the HUD. And things like that's really awesome. I love seeing new stuff like that in Game Guru. He's really creative and innovative. And also, I would like to say he's very bold, too. Him going out and actually having an interview with Lee for his documentary and saying, okay, here's all the challenges the community's been having, or he's been having as well, and being able to ask those questions like completely head on, right from the source. And I think that's a very bold thing to do, and it also shows that he's very passionate about the engine as well. So he's a great member of the community, and I can't wait to see that documentary. And also, I'd love to see Ignite when it comes out, whenever that is. And if not that one, then hopefully another game, because I think he has a lot of talent, and he's actually pretty good at making games. So I would love to see a finished one.
Wow. Yeah. Well, T-Bone is really great at scripting, and he's got some really great vision for his projects, and I really hope he releases something one day, because what we see him working on, his kind of work in progress stuff, whether it's his dungeon crawler or his kind of third person sort of Resident Evil style game, or even the survival game, they all look like really interesting projects, and I'd love to see that. It's funny, he says I'm quite a decent level designer. I don't actually think I'm that great at level designing. It's actually probably one of my weaker areas, I think.
Hang on a second there. I think, extraction point level 1 are, these are mostly stock assets, but you somehow managed to, when I played it the first time, I was like, oh wow, these are stock assets, but they are so well put together, and you have to have a very good skill at level designing when you can pull this off.
Maybe. I don't know. Maybe I'm just being modest, but I think my strong suit is a bit like what T-Bone mentioned there is bringing my filmmaking skills to bear on Game Guru. My what I'm good at is adding that last little like 5-10% of polish that can make even, like what you said, a shitty asset flip Game Guru game look like something that was made by like a B grade studio. I'm really good at that last little, like the presentation stuff. So, you know, custom menus and trailers and cinematics and UI and stuff. Moment to moment gameplay, like I am a lot less au fait with, and like gunplay and things. I probably don't have such a great sense for like weight and feedback on gunplay and things, and probably don't spend as long tinkering with stuff like that. And again, level design is kind of like, yeah, like I find it really interesting listening to yourself and Wolf talk about your process for making levels, because I think you obviously you have an objective you want to have out of a level, but I think you start by making a really fun environment to explore, and then you kind of add the gameplay in afterwards.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas I would approach a level completely differently. I would start with, what do I want the player to do in this level? Okay, how do I construct an area that makes him do that? And fun enough, that was one of Wolf's comments on Ignite. So there's only a 3-level sort of test build of it that you can go and play now. But when he kind of played that back, he said, yeah, it's really good, but the levels feel like game levels. Like if I walk into a room, I understand that the room only exists because, you know, it's there to give the player a puzzle that they have to solve. It doesn't look like it's an environment that has existed for hundreds of years in this castle, and that it actually has a real life function or purpose. And he's right. Like I literally was like, okay, in the next room, I want to reinforce that the player has to stack boxes or something to move up this obstacle, or they have to throw a switch to do this. I want to keep reinforcing gameplay techniques. It's a different approach to making levels, and it ends up with levels being a bit more kind of gamey. So that's one of the things I'd like to develop in whatever the next project is making them feel a little bit more like proper environments that could actually be lived in, because I think that's something your games do really well, and Wolf's games do really well.
Yeah. Well, there's not much I can say to this. For me, it's I wanted to make sure that every level sort of stands for itself. Like, I want to be able to, you know, there's this hub level, and then you can select any level you want to play. And, of course, the story connects, but I want it to be different enough so that it doesn't feel repetitive. So
did you know where the story was going when you started the game? Did you know, okay, I'm working towards this point, therefore I will need
not
to have...
at all, not one bit.
See, that just frightens the hell out of me, because it's just like that project could just go on forever, theoretically.
And
it
did go for a very long time, like 3.5 years. Originally, the trailer said, the first announcement teaser said, coming in December 2021.
Wow.
You know, that was so far off from the actual release. The early access release was on 21st January of 2021. And that release had 6 levels in it. And now we are down to 18.
Yeah, I mean, it's just different approaches. And that's what's interesting about these podcast episodes, is just hearing people's different approaches. I like to work all these things out sometimes on paper first, or in a Word doc or something. You know, if I've got a story to tell, I kind of need to work out the pacing of that story, and then I'll kind of go, okay, well, I need a level that does this. Or sometimes I'll think, well, you know, I only want to make a 3-level game, so what story can I tell in 3 levels? Because it can just go on forever otherwise. So yeah, it's that's interesting.
So to get this right, I'm not writing anything down. You know, sometimes when I go to bed and I should sleep, then my mind starts going crazy, and I got all of a sudden so many ideas, and I have to get to the phone and write them all down. And I got so many ideas, and I have written a lot of stuff down, of course, but only half of them actually make it to the game. So I don't plan this much, and it really is intuitive, you know. It just comes to my mind, sort of. I can't even explain it properly. So there are some things I definitely wanted to have, like, I think it was level 9, you know, the big ocean-like area with the sandy textures and all that, and the lightning storm in the background. From the beginning of the development, I wanted to have, I had certain ideas of levels I wanted to have in the game, like, I want to have at least one bunker and at least one massive area, then one swamp, one forest, you know, sort of like themes I want to complete in the development. You know, the game has to have at least one snow level, and I just want to cover as many themes as possible while still making somewhat sense in the story.
Yeah.
So we were talking about Wolf also, and here it's the last opinion, but it's his opinion, and here it comes.
Hey everyone, Wolf here, and Duke asked me what I think about Avenging Eagle. Well, I think he's a danger to society and has to be incarcerated. I mean, come on. Smooth, professionally seeming cutscenes in Game Guru, light effects like in a real engine. Who does this guy think he is? I mean, come on, seriously. But in all seriousness, I always liked the old timer. And by old timer, I mean that he's been around just as long as I have. I still know him from the Game Creators Forums, the old forums, and I always thought he was American because of the name Avenging Eagle, and it's like the bald eagle. It's like Republican American to a fault, but he's actually British and really, really nice to get along with. He always strikes me as reliable. He has a certain aura of professionalism that I really admire and that I can absolutely not live up to. No, he just seems like a good-natured guy, and he's easy to get along with, and I'm glad he's part of our community. And I also have to add that I have nothing but respect for the balls and determination it took for him to actually go out on a limb and go chase his dream, become a videographer, and actually making it. That's the kind of stuff I really admire in a fellow man. I bet there are a lot of great, talented artists that are just stuck working in the back of some warehouse because they never had the nerve. And Scott had the nerve, and that's something I look up to.
Wow.
Right, back to you guys.
I forgot that also.
No, that's amazing. It doesn't. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't feel like I had the nerve. I think. Yeah, I've got friends who were on my course at university who are now actively directing movies like that you would go and see in the cinema.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it almost doesn't feel like I'm actually in the film industry, because I've kind of adopted this weird sort of position where I'm a permanent paid up member of staff making videos, which is not normally how the film industry works. It's normally very freelance kind of gig economy, going from job to job. But yeah, the running theme of professionalism makes me laugh a little bit. But obviously, yeah, it's a lovely compliment to hear. And yeah, in terms of like some of the themes that Wolf touched on there, like again, it's like what I said before. It's that's my strong suit, is adding that little 5% of magic dust over a project to make it look a bit nicer and a bit more professional. So yeah, I really enjoy doing stuff like that.
I can only second his opinion about the professionalism. Like before our podcast, you made me wait quite a bit, I gotta say. I was, the longer it took to, actually happen, I was getting so nervous. Like, man, I can't keep up with his, way of speaking, his professionalism. And now that I'm actually talking to you, it's like more, on a more even level. So, it just goes to show that your videos, you are doing them very well, and they make a deep impression on people.
Yeah, I mean, I spend a lot of time writing the scripts to those videos to make them concise and make them informative. I'm currently working on a script at the moment for the video that comes after the Game Creators Documentary, which has nothing to do with game making at all. I thought I'd do a little break from game related videos for a bit, and it's about one of the films I made, and how I made it, because it's been 5 years since I made this particular short film. And yeah, like there's a lot of revision that goes into writing those sort of things. And I've kind of developed a sort of a voiceover voice as well. Like, I think if you talk to me in person, I'm very different to how I come across in my voiceover work.
Like I had the the issue sort of like I a lot of things go over my head when during the preparation phase of the podcast. Like this is episode 4, but this is still a big thing for me, and it's a real challenge also. And I picture myself talking with those various people, and with you, I couldn't imagine it at all. Like, it was so tough to get into the thought of having a lively conversation. And even though we talked before, the interview, it wasn't quite the same because I was talking most of the time. And yeah, it's
yeah, I mean, it's a persona that I've adopted really for my videos. Is this kind of, and I've definitely got a voiceover voice when I do voiceover. And the thing is, it's a big part of my job as well, in everyday life, because the nature of the organization that I work for, we produce a lot of content which requires audio description, and you have to speak very clearly. It also requires voiceover, and if I watch back some of my early videos, you can tell I'm either reading it off a script and I just sound like I'm reading, and that just doesn't sound very good at all. But now, as I look at my up to date stuff, and there's so much voiceover in the documentary. It's I adopt a completely different register, and but it's on purpose, it's to give it that more sort of professional quality. I don't just want it to seem like I'm just rambling about something. I actually want it to seem like it's properly researched, and I'm trying to tell it in the most concise way possible, so that I don't ramble for hours.
It sounds really native, if that's right.
Okay, yeah.
Native? Is that the right word? Natively?
I'm not sure exactly.
Like it doesn't sound forced or anything.
Oh, natural.
Natural, yeah. Thanks, yeah.
Okay, yeah. No, definitely. Well, I try and make it natural, but no, there's the difference between us talking now in this sort of situation where it's quite informal, and then me like having to read something. I almost feel like I now need to do a demonstration for those that haven't like heard me do voiceover voice, but voiceover voice is completely different. So like voiceover voice is like, Ancestors is a sci-fi short film I released 5 years ago today. Made for the Wex Shorts film competition. I did everything in it myself, including acting in it and even writing the music. It's like a completely different way of talking, but it makes it sound better, I think. But it's the result of me scripting and editing and, getting that down to, something that makes sense.
Yeah. All right, so we touched on this topic earlier, but now let's get into Cineguru. I always said Sign Guru for some reason, but for me, until I had the episode with Riley, See Forever, I always thought it was Sign Guru for some reason. So I'm glad I learned that in the first episode. So what made you create Cineguru, and how did you pull it off? I mean, how did you get Armin Moses to work with you on such a big project?
Well, okay. So firstly, where the idea came from. So as you mentioned before, Extraction Point has a cinematic at the beginning of it, and it's just your standard how you would do like a video normally for a Game Guru level. So it's an MP4 file that just plays at the start of the level. And in order to create that, I was using screen recording software to record, parts of the game, and I was putting sound effects over it. And I also did a little bit I took some Game Guru assets and put them in my 3D modeling software and did some shots in there. And I did some stuff where I added some kind of 3D elements and things to Game Guru footage to kind of marry the two together. But it was really difficult, basically. It was really difficult to pull that off, and trying to write scripts to instruct characters to kind of do things on command was really difficult. And at the end of Extraction Point, there's a sort of an in-game cinematic where the main sort of bad guy from the game kind of walks up to you and delivers a little monologue, and he plays a load of like animations on cue as if he's sort of acting. But it was all really rudimentary. And after I finished that, I thought, well, there has to be a way of doing that better in Game Guru. And I think at this point I was already deep into working on Ignite, and I was going through global.lua, looking at the different Lua commands, and I think I was looking for something completely different to do with Ignite, but I happened to come across a command that allowed you to change the camera position.
Oh wow, okay.
Which I had never noticed before.
Yeah.
I think that must have been a recent addition. So I was like, okay, well, you know, I've said this before, I'm not a very good scripter, but, you know, maybe I can try and make something out of this. So I set up a little scene with 2 characters at a table, and I made a little marker entity of a camera. And I was kind of like, I just basically wrote a script that was like, if the player enters this zone, move the camera position to be the same position and rotation and orientation as this camera marker.
Wow.
And it worked. The
Yeah.
camera moved to that position, and then it wouldn't move back. And I was like, okay, so that's useless then. Okay, well, if I add a second camera, will it go to the second camera? And I think I managed to get that working. And then I was like, but it still isn't working, and there's no shadows on what I'm looking at. So I kind of approached our members and said, look, I'm just trying to put together this little thing, you know, to do like basic cutscenes, like maybe a couple of people talking. How will we go about doing that? And so he took a look at my script, and as is the running theme, you know, we'd already worked together on Ignite. He took a look at what I'd written and was like, this is amateurish bullshit. I'm going to rewrite it from scratch. And he wrote this very elegant solution that kind of did it. And I was kind of like, this is really cool. And I was like, can we expand on this a little bit? And he was like, well, what would you like it to do? And I was like, well, it would be cool if the camera could move. So he was like, okay, well, why don't, you know, I'll write something that kind of tells the camera to move. But you've got to say how long it's going to take to move. So I was like, okay, well, can we use stuff like, you know, the health of the entity? Can we use that value as a way to sort of tell the camera what to do? And he said, no, don't do it with values like that. Do it in the name of the entity. So he wrote this script that basically the way you name the entity dictates what it does. So
that's really cool. Yeah.
it's kind of like, so you name your camera, you say how long the shot lasts, you say what the focal length of the shot is, because I also said, oh, it'd be cool if we could zoom, because we've got frame of view control in Game Guru. And he was like, yeah, okay, I can add that. I was like, it'd be cool if we could like fade up. And basically I just kept coming back to him and saying, it would be cool if, and he was just really interested in the challenge of doing it. So we started with just making cameras, and I was like, okay, the cameras are great, but like, if you go from one camera position to another, it's not a smooth transition from one to the other. So I came up with the solution of like, well, what if we had like a little invisible entity somewhere in your scene that was like the focal point, like the camera always points to that point throughout the shot. That would make it a smooth rotation. So he coded that, and it worked. And I was like, but what if we had 2 focal points and you could move between them? And he was like, okay. So we've coded that, and it worked. And we gradually just built this whole pack of things you could do out of this, you know, these Lua commands. And we did cool stuff like, I was like, okay, it would be cool if we could do like camera shake. And so he went and researched and found this like Perlin noise library or whatever it is. Like, I'm not even sure what it is, but it's like a table of values, I think, that randomly moves the camera in an interesting but kind of organic way. And so he added that. We added in commands for actors. We added in commands to start triggering stuff on command. So I built a test map where we could start putting these things together. And I was like, it'd be cool if we could add credits. So he coded something so we could add credits. I was like, it'd be cool if we could add sound effects. So we added something to add sound effects. It'd be cool if we could have like letterbox bars. So it like looks more like a movie, like it's like widescreen. So again, he added that. Awesome. So I provided all of the art assets and the markers, and I kind of told him, I used my experience as a filmmaker to tell him what I would want out of a tool like that. So what control would I want to have over stuff like that? And he actioned it and tested it, and And I pitched the idea to him quite early on. I said, look, this is pretty cool. No one else has done anything like this in Game Guru. Do you think we could make this into a product and we could, share the proceeds? I think people would be really interested in that. And he was like, for me, it's not really about the money, but yeah, sure. Like, let's go ahead. I'm just interested in the programming challenge, because he's incredibly modest. So, yeah, and it's gone on to be a huge success. And it's now, we got a lot of interest from TGC in the beginning, but we didn't want to let go of our baby straight away. So we kept it on the Game Creators Store for quite a while. But then, once we felt like we'd worked through the bugs and got something that really worked, and we'd kind of saturated our market a little bit with the Game Creators Store, we then thought, okay, I think this could be a DLC pack on Steam, and we were prepared to kind of open up those conversations again. I was really surprised that TGC came after it, because at that point they hadn't even spoken about Game Guru Classic for months, because it was all about Game Guru Max. And then out of nowhere they were just like, yeah, let's release another DLC pack for Game Guru Classic. So yeah, that's technically my first release on Steam, although I don't have to do anything for it. It's all administered by the game creators. But
still, that's awesome.
Yeah, and it's a really cool little tool.
And you made all these tutorials, it must have been taking ages.
Yes. Yeah. So originally I wrote a manual for Cineguru, which is like 50 pages long, because a big downside of the Game Creators products is the lack of documentation. So I wanted to make damn sure that everything was very clearly tutorialized so that people could follow it, because it's a complicated program to get into, because you're asking people to name things in very specific ways, and it's fiddly. The Game Guru Max version, which we've done a little bit of work on, is a lot simpler to use. So I'll put that out. It's like a little teaser for that. No idea when that's going to be finished. We kind of need a few bugs from Game Guru Max to be sort of fixed first. And I also need like some time to actually look at it. But yeah, a lot of it is done through like using the linking logic in Game Guru Max. Like you can draw those connections between different elements. So Cineguru Max will be a lot more intuitive to use. And because we've got dynamic lure, all those little kind of adjustments to like focal length and the length of a shot and things like that, you can do all that in the editor, cool. Using sliders and tick boxes and whatever. You don't have to sit there and with the manual open on one screen, kind of looking over and kind of go, okay, I need to type it like this and put a comma here. And so it's a lot easier to use.
So, what's your current opinion about Game Guru Max?
It's better than it was when I tried to use it in the run-up to the early access build. I tried to gather gameplay footage from it for my interview with Lee when that came out a year ago, and I had a lot of problems getting it to run, and a lot of crashes. I've used it more recently, not really in any serious capacity, but I've played the demo games made with it and, toyed around with it a little bit. For me, it is missing something. It's running better than it used to, but my computer is quite old now and is not really. It doesn't run as well as it should, to be honest. I think Game Guru Max requires a lot more power and resources than it has any right to, which presumably means it's terribly unoptimized, which would not be a stretch for the Game Creators engine. They don't often run very well initially. I hope that they add, more performance to it and optimize it a bit better. I don't think they're making full use of the Wicked engine. I think I've played around in the Wicked engine a little bit as soon as it was announced, and I saw a lot of potential in there for some really cool looking stuff. And I don't feel like that graphical quality has yet made it to Game Guru Max. Now, whether or not that's because they've had to strip it out to make it more performant and make it run better, I don't know. But on the demo maps, I'm still only getting sort of maybe 30 frames a second at some parts, which is just not great. I mean, I know I don't have a fantastic PC, but it shouldn't be as bad as that. And I can't really see myself using it for any serious game projects for quite a while, which is a shame because I think there is potential in there. Like, it could look really nice.
Yeah.
I lament the lack of light mapping because I really enjoy light mapping, and Wicked Engine has some great capabilities for light mapping, and it can do bounce lighting, so it can make stuff look really cool. You can do like indirect lighting.
Yeah.
And I've done some basic tests where I've used Wicked's light mapper, and it looks really nice.
Okay.
But Game Guru Max has gone down the route of being all dynamic lights. I don't like the lighting in Game Guru Max at the moment. It was recently revealed to me, in fact, it was by the developer of Wicked Engine, that the fall off of the lights, how they transition from really bright to really dark, it never looked quite right to me. And I tried putting one of my levels from Ignite into Game Guru Max, and the lighting just didn't look right, and I couldn't really work out why.
Yeah.
And then I realized it was because the light around things like the flaming torches just felt like this sort of ball of light, because it doesn't fall off in a realistic way.
Yeah.
There's a sort of there's a mathematical expression for how light should fall off called the inverse square law, which is something that I learned when I made Volumetrics, my little DLC pack for sort of light rays and things. And it gives light a very naturalistic fall off. And the DirectX 11 and previous versions of Wicked don't use inverse square maths for the fall off of the lights, whereas the DirectX 12 version does. So presumably this is something that can be fixed over time, and that will help make the lighting look better. But yeah, I think it's tough to come to an opinion on Game Guru Max while it's still in flux. It's still very much in development. I would love to use it and kind of make something out of it, but I also kind of feel like maybe I'm a bit beyond the game creators' products now, and maybe I should be looking at more professional tools like Unity and Unreal and things, particularly Unreal, because there's a good sort of basis for doing filmmaking stuff in Unreal. But it worries me a little bit that many of our friends and colleagues have gone off and tried to use Unreal and have ended up coming back to Game Guru because it's just too damn difficult to make anything playable in it. It just takes so much time. So yeah, I don't really know where that leaves me in terms of my game development journey. So yeah, who knows? Maybe I'll even go back to FPS Creator.
So what was your opinion? So, I mean, your reaction when you heard Wolf saying that GG Classic was his favorite engine?
Yeah, well, I was surprised by that. It contradicts what I thought, and I think he's changed his opinion in the last 12 months. But I get it. Game making has to be, it's like all hobbies have to be fun. And if you're not having fun doing it, if you're spending too much time working on something, if it feels like work, then I can get that that's not something that you're going to want to carry on. And I can see how Unreal has so much depth to it and so much complexity that even getting simple things done could be a massive challenge. So yeah, I can understand why there's an appeal. There's still an appeal to come back to a kind of a more simplistic engine like Game Guru or Game Guru Max even, and play around in that. And if he's happy with that, that's fine. I mean, he has no aspirations to create a commercial product in Game Guru. Obviously, you have created a commercial product in Game Guru. It took a lot of time and effort to do it, but you did it. And you're one of the few that has. And then there's FPS Creator, which again, it still has its faults, but it's been brought on tremendously by Black Ice Mod and the work that Nomad and S4 Real have done on that mod over the years.
You are taking away questions.
all right.
So, let's take a step back a bit from Game Guru Max to Classic. But before we do that, I just want to add my few cents to that also. I really enjoyed Max lately. But my enjoyment has come to an halt also because with the recent update I had many issues like crashing during test mode, and I can't run the standalone anymore. So
it's not very stable, is it?
Not at all, and I've put my projects to a hold right now, but I will be definitely back on Max because learning, I like to think of it as a new engine because it's so different from Classic in many regards, and
Yeah. I mean, I have ideas for games, but I don't think Max or Classic is the best place to execute them. So that's one of the reasons why I'd like to try something else. But yeah, I think I was actually probably more surprised by your 180 in opinion over Game Guru Max than I was over Wolf's because, Wolf's been around the community a lot longer and, he's still, it's not that long ago that he was making FPS creator games even to this day. So I can see why he would, get the urge to go and make something. And like I said, doesn't want to make a commercial product. It's just a hobby for him. That's fine. But when you said, actually, Game Guru Max is actually pretty cool and I'm really enjoying making a level in it, I was like, well, shit.
No, the reactions were so funny. I was not expecting this at all myself. Like, it just randomly was an idea again. I was playing a game. I was explaining this in one of my videos, and I thought, man, I want to just make a bunker and have those dynamic shadows, and yeah, that made me fire up GG Max again, and for the first time ever I had fun and made a couple of videos, and the comments have been really great and they motivated me to keep going, and yeah, it's been really fun lately. So yeah,
there is such a lot of potential in
unexpected.
it. If they manage to get the RPG features working and they manage to get the performance working, there is such a lot of potential to make something really cool.
Absolutely.
But just, we're not there yet.
Yeah. So now we are really getting back to GG Classic. 2022 has been perhaps the best year ever for GG Classic, I think. What do you think of these improvements that have been added?
Well, they're fantastic. They've definitely prolonged the life of the engine. It's great that we finally have alt textures in and video textures. This is something I've been campaigning for the longest time. It's something that used to be in FPS Creator, and it's just taken such a long time to come over. And it's nice that TGC has opened the source code up a little bit and is allowing those community contributions. There's an argument to be made that it shouldn't be up to the community to do this stuff.
Yeah.
TGC should have taken a more responsibility in their engine and added this stuff sooner, but for one reason and another they haven't done that, and the features that they've added have quite often been unfinished. So it's nice to see new features being added now. I still think that Game Guru Classic has a lot of potential, particularly if they can get the lighting side of it sorted out. I think dynamic lights and dynamic shadows would be really cool if you could have kind of moving dynamic lights and dynamic shadows. That'd be very cool. But yeah, I mean, if you want to see how far the community can take a TGC product and produce something that looks nothing like the original and improve it, I mean, just look at Black Ice Mod. Look at all the stuff they've been able to add. I mean, the water in Black Ice Mod looks better than that in Game Guru Classic. And I know that Cybernescence has even done some experimentation with water that looks really cool. The waves and things, ocean waves. And yeah, I'd love to see that in a Game Guru game. I still don't think the shader looks as good as what they've got in Black Ice Mod. I still think it looks just like moving plastic. It doesn't look like water. But with more help, it shouldn't just be left up to Cyber to do this. It should be other members of the community helping him. And it'd be great if we could just rip the graphics engine out of Game Guru Classic and kind of have something that's more on the level of, Wicked Engine or whatever.
Yeah.
Something with a unified light mapper or lighting model.
Absolutely, yeah. So you already took the next question a bit away. So with FPS Creator, it's still alive because of people like Nomad and S4Real. So that's totally amazing. I even purchased Black Ice Mod Advanced, even though I'm not an actual FPS Creator user. But I wanted to look into it myself, and last time I had like a physics error, so I will be getting back to this. But many years have passed since the original release of FPS Creator, and it certainly is way off its peak right now, and you have been around all the time. So, is there something you can tell me from that time that I definitely need to know, but because I joined years later?
What about FPS Creator?
Yeah, everything. Maybe community, something interesting happened, or like I feel like I missed so much history there.
Yeah, it was the early days of FPS Creator weren't that dissimilar from Game Guru Classic. There were a lot of problems with that engine initially. I think we look back on it with rose-tinted glasses. But I noticed this when I came to do my FPS Creator Classics YouTube series. It's really difficult to find playable, decent games made in FPS Creator in the first 3 or 4 years that it was around. You know, I left that kind of community in 2009, and that's really when the best games started to come out, because by that point, I mean, FPS Creator X10 had sort of died on its ass, and TGC had switched the focus back to Game Guru Classic, FPS Creator Classic, and they started implementing some of the community-made mods back into the engine. And so that extended the life of the engine, but also the functionality. And suddenly it started to become a little bit more stable, and you could do kind of cool things with the lighting. And I mean, what was nice about FPS Creator was that it was very simple to use, but it gave you a lot of opportunity to put your own stamp on a game. It was very easy to add your own menu screens and loading screens, very easy to kind of add, you know, change textures of things within the editor, add your own sound effects. You know, you had all the same controls you have in Game Guru Classic for kind of changing the look of the level, like the ambience and things. I don't think fog was even a thing originally, but that came in later. But it gave you enough scope to be able to kind of create some really cool and interesting levels. And TGC actually supplied tools to help you bring your own media in. There was no model importer in FPSC, but there was a segment creation kit, which was a really rudimentary program that they made where you could make your own segments and walls and floors and things and doors. And I mean, one feature that I really miss in Game Guru Classic that was in FPS Creator is CSG meshes. So is it complex solid geometry? I think that's what it stands for. Basically, it's a Boolean operation that's performed on a mesh to punch a hole through it. So you could have a wall and you could punch a hole through it to make a door or a window or an air vent. And it meant that, you know, you could have a lot of variation out of just one kind of wall model, because you could punch holes in it to do windows and doors and things. Nowadays, in Game Guru Classic, you'd have to model the hole into the door in your modeling program and export it that way. Or you'd have to use the easy building editor, which was, as we've discussed, is kind of terrible because there's no curved surfaces. It's all done out of little blocks. So yeah, but I think what's been really nice about revisiting those FPS Creator games has been seeing the tremendous variety that came out of the community in that time. And a lot of people actually were able to produce finished games. You know, there's way more finished games from FPS Creator than there are from Game Guru. There's a lot of projects that were started in Game Guru, but they just never finished. And, you know, there's a lot of unfinished projects on the FPS Creator forums as well. But there was so much variety there. You know, you'd look down the forum, like work in progress threads, and you'd see someone's making a sci-fi game, someone's making a World War II game, someone's making a hard-boiled like crime game, like Max Payne type thing. Someone's making a educational game. They're making like Letters Kingdom. I always go back to that as a really interesting example of what can be done with FPS Creator. You know, someone's making a post-apocalyptic game. So there's just all these different things. If someone's making a puzzle game in black and white, someone's making something that's like a stream of consciousness sort of dreamscape game. All of these ideas, you know, considering you had a very limited set of tools, FPS Creator allowed you to really express yourself in a very personal way. And I think something was lost in the translation up to Game Guru Classic. I think we lost that ability to create something that was really original. I think part of that is because you're just presented with this green terrain and you're just told get on with it. So naturally the first thing people do is they just start sculpting terrain, and already, you know, your game is an exterior level set on Earth. It's not necessarily, you know, you don't think about doing other types of gameplay or other types of setting.
Yeah.
But yeah, the mods, kept that engine alive even as early as sort of 2007, 2008. And TGC was smart enough to implement those into the engine, and it extended the lifespan of it for probably another 5 to 7 years. So yeah, and some of the best FPSC games that came out, Shatria Prologue, 2013. I mean, the engine was already 8 years old at that point. Phobia, again, 2013, I think 2014 maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think also FPSC benefited from being at the kind of apex of that little fad in gaming where people were making really short horror games. And because FPS Creator had a working light mapper, you could kind of create, it wasn't difficult to create something with a lot of shadows and darkness and kind of play with the sort of, sinister side of things, and make that really easily. So that there are some really cracking little horror games that were made in that engine.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I've played many FPS Creator games myself also, and they are so versatile. Like, you mentioned Phobia, that was pretty cool. And do you remember from the Russian dev that made Emerald Lake?
Yes, I've not played Emerald Lake, but
I played it. I loved it. That was so awesome. And the amount of scripting that went into that game and the animations and all that shit, that was awesome. And I really got, scared out of my pants quite a few times in that game. Like, I recorded a YouTube video without commentary, but there was a jump scare and you can see the whole screen shaking. that was so well put together, and that guy who made it, he's now making a horror game in Unreal Engine.
Is he? Okay.
I follow his stuff on YouTube, so yeah. But, I think also much more commercial games have been released with FPS Creator.
Yeah, I think that's
many more than with Game Guru.
Yeah, definitely. And I suppose part of that is because it was perhaps easier to get away with the lower quality back then. I think audiences are a bit more discerning now about what they're willing to play. Yeah. But yeah, like we said, I think FPS Creator was a really great sandbox that gave you a springboard to be creative. It couldn't do everything, and it said it. It said it right on the site. You weren't going to go and create a driving game out of FPS Creator. Although weirdly, I don't know if you've seen this, but on the Black Ice Mod Discord, someone has scripted a car that you can drive.
Yeah,
now
I think FPS I saw Creator. That. Yeah, that's totally amazing.
In that tiny 40 by 40 by 20 grid, which is like, you could never make a full level out of it. That was like an outdoor level. Yeah. But so it couldn't do very much, but what it could do very well, and it had like tremendous depth to it. Whereas I think Game Guru Classic tried to be all things to everybody, and it kind of basically, the answer was, well, you've got Lua now, you can script it all yourself. And it's like, okay, but no one that uses Game Guru Classic outside of a few users are coders. That's the whole point. We joined because we're artists and we want to get our 3D worlds and our 3D models into an engine quickly and easily. Yeah. So telling me I can make a... Sorry, go ahead.
So and there goes the easy game maker, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, they used to call it, exactly, a code-free way of making games. Really?
Maybe on the front of the building, but inside it's a whole different story.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And I'm very sure you saw this also, like Xandy's game. That's totally insane what he's doing.
Yeah, I mean, the gunplay in that is better than we've seen in probably any Game Guru Classic game. Aside from maybe yours has got some pretty good gunplay, I've got to say. But what boggles my mind is the way that he's got the ammo count written on the back of the gun, and it changes as he fires. I do not know how he does that, but that's awesome. And I'd love to have that functionality in a TGC engine.
I actually hired him for a Taipei contract.
Really?
Yeah, and he added this gun ammo counter on the weapons as well. But still to this day, I don't know how he did it. So.
Does it actually work?
It works in Game Guru Classic, yeah.
Okay. Wow.
It's not on all the weapons, but it's on the sniper rifle, the shotgun, and the assault rifle, I think. Yeah. And when his game comes out, it will by far surpass anything that's ever been made with any of the TGC engines, I think. Like, he will overshadow like my game by far also. So
Well,
I will hold this title of making perhaps the most enhanced game with Game Guru TGC products in my hands, but not too long maybe.
yeah, but that's natural because I mean, give it time and people will surpass it. Like I think Phobia is probably a more polished product than Kshatriya Prologue, but you wouldn't say that either are bad. Not one's not better than the other.
Yeah.
They're both very different, and they came out 2 years apart. So it's kind of that was probably the best FPS creator game at that point. But then look at what we've had since. I mean, Emerald Lake, like you mentioned it earlier. I've not played it, but I'm so aware of it, and the other games that developer has made.
Yeah, he made yeah, what was the name? White Mirror or something like that. Also, FPS creator horror games. Yeah, I also have them on Steam. They aren't available anymore on Steam, by the way. That's a real shame. But I have them, and they're also like the graphics. I really like the graphics in those games, like those bit of shiny walls. It looks very polished to me, at least. That's very cool.
Yeah, definitely.
So, we talked about many things you have done, and all of them are quite well documented on your channel. But I think one topic is missing, and I don't know if you ever really posted that much about it, but you made weapons yourself, didn't you?
Yeah, yes, I did.
What happened with that?
So, are we talking about FPS creator World War II weapons, or are we talking about kind of more recent stuff?
The more recent stuff. I think you made a pistol with a silencer.
That's right. Yeah, I did. Yeah. So, well, okay. Okay. So, once I got into FPS creator around about 2006, 2007, I wanted to make some World War II weapons for FPS creator because they didn't have very many. There was a few kind of World War II weapons, maybe 5. But I was just off the back of playing Call of Duty 2, and I wanted to have all of the different weapons you could have in that. So I wanted, a K98, and I wanted a Lee Enfield, and I wanted a Bren gun, and all these things. So I was not a very good modeler at that time, but guns seemed like a pretty good way to get started because they're all just primitives, cylinders and boxes and things. So I modeled a lot of guns with the intention of releasing a World War II weapons pack. And I was posting regular screenshots of what I've modeled. I didn't know how to animate them, and I collaborated with another member of the community to get one of them animated, but it just fell apart. And in the end, I had to prioritize my real life over FPS creator, and I kind of just left that. But I always wondered, like, it would be really cool to make a weapon one day. And so, yeah, I just decided I'm going to give this a go. Like, I've learned so much in the intervening years. So was it last year or maybe possibly the year before? I decided to model a pistol, modeled a Glock 19, I think, with a silencer, just to see if I could actually model it properly. And I set myself the goal of, I mean, T-Bone touched on it earlier in his comment. He says I'm quite a competent 3D modeler. I don't model quickly, and I don't model in very good software. I use Animator, which is a free piece of software that is lacking a lot of features. But because I've been using it for nearly, well, it's about 17, 18 years now, I know it inside out. And so I can model what I want. And I've gotten very good at making quite efficient models. So there's not a lot of wastage in terms of the poly count. So I can really make the most of it. So I wanted to make a gun that was up to the same quality as the enhanced weapons pack. So I studied how Errant AI had made his guns and all the kind of bits that had to be in there for it to be animated. So, the fact that the magazine well has to actually be modeled because the magazine has to come out of the gun and you have to be able to see a round in the top of the magazine. But also when you're doing the reload animation, there shouldn't be a bullet in the top of the magazine because it's empty, right? You're reloading. So all those little things like that. And yeah, I mean, I spent quite a long time modeling it and texturing it, and then I set myself the challenge of animating it. And yeah, I mean, I did okay. As a first go, it wasn't too bad. Errant AI actually came back to me and said that the stance that the gun is held at is a bit unnatural and a bit old school. It's a sort of it's a type of gripping the pistol that went out of fashion in the 80s, but I've never held a pistol before, like properly. Like I've never shot a real gun apart from clay pigeon shooting. So, you know, I'm not a firearms expert by any stretch of the imagination. It is something I would like to do more of. I really enjoyed modeling that pistol. I've not released it to the community. Well, I wasn't allowed to because it had errant's arms on it. So it was a good learning experience for me, and I would love to do more of it. It took a long time to get it looking decent, but yeah, I mean, I'd love to kind of model more guns for Game Guru, and yeah,
Can't have enough guns ever.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, I mean, well, I'm speaking to Mr. Armorer himself. 70 guns in
80. We are down at 81, I think, for the final version of Dark Skies.
So, is there ever too many guns in a game? I'm guessing your answer is no.
No.
So, well, my perspective on it is that I think that you should only add a weapon to a game if it changes up the gameplay experience. So I'm a big fan of like the old school FPS games where every gun feels very different and has a different effect on the enemy. So like I often go back and think about things like Jedi Knight and Jedi Knight 2 and 3, and like, you know, you've got your blaster, but you've also got your kind of E11 blaster pistols and things, but then you've got like concussion rifles, and they each have a unique feel to them. So when I make FPS games, you know, I want each weapon to have its own unique feel. So for me, having 10 different assault rifles that all, you know, maybe they sound slightly different, but they all basically have the same range and the same characteristics, that doesn't add a lot of variety to the gameplay for me. So I'm less likely to do a game with 80 guns, although I do appreciate the effort that goes into it, because I mean, man, that's a lot. That's a lot of work. But yeah,
I totally understand and also agree with your point of view. I'm just a huge weapon nerd, basically. Sometimes it helped me get motivated again if I have a new gun in Dark Skies. So I added many guns just for me to have that something new I could add to the next level. And okay, I got this new gun. I'm looking at this level many times, and I just want to see something new, maybe. And yeah, that's been quite often the case.
it's a nice tool for player progression as well, to give them a new weapon to play out. I think, like, to try out. I think that's a good strategy. It's been a while since I've played through the whole of Dark Skies, but there are some pretty cool guns in there. Now I remember being like, I was trying to pick which one was my favorite. So.
Yeah, and people receive the variety very well. So the Steam reviews, those things matter at the end. And I'm really happy. Somehow I pulled it off. I'm like at 70% right now. I barely made it over the mixed reviews tag, so 70 reviews is pretty insane,
Yeah, definitely. Well, you definitely deserve it. Yeah, it's a monumental achievement, and you should be really proud of yourself for sticking with it and adding all that content.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been many ups and downs for sure, but I think it was worth it. Yeah.
So is that it now for Dark Skies, or is there going to be more levels, or kind of DLC multiplayer levels?
No, I think I'm really done with Dark Skies. Maybe I'm patiently waiting for Mipas to stream where he will play the whole game in one stream. He announced that already, like when it released. And maybe if I find some monumental issues there, I will fire up GG Classic again and fix it. But as of now, I think most of the issues have been addressed. Even the AI, by the way, I have custom AI in the game now.
I thought you did. Yeah, it seemed a lot smarter and better than what we normally have.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm actually allowed to talk about it, but it's a secret project and it will maybe be released in the future. It's not made by myself, of course, but Defi has been really busy lately, so
yes,
that's been really a fun part of the final.
Defy, you mean?
Defy, yeah. Yeah, so that was pretty cool. So to add the new AI in the latest build.
Cool.
So, you know, when making this podcast, some of the questions are obviously repeating. And I was thinking, what could I ask that I didn't ask people before? You said this at the beginning, you're not that much of a gamer, but, you know, you played obviously some games. And what was your first game and your favorite games?
Ooh, my first game. That's a difficult one. I'm not sure I can even remember. I've been using the computer since I was like 3.
Oh wow, okay.
But not in any serious capacity. I had a little kids game, like a coloring game, where you could like paint things. And I enjoyed that, but you know, you're not really kind of gaming. And I can't remember whether my first game was a shooter like Quake 2 or whether it was a RTS game, Age of Empires, the original Age of Empires, which I actually, for a long time, I actually preferred the original Age of Empires because it's ancient history and I'm more interested in that than I am in kind of medieval history. But so I loved those games growing up. And yeah, I mean, I've played quite a few shooters over the years. So I'm a big fan of, like I said, I've already mentioned, you know, the Quake series. But I also, as I got a bit older, I got into things like BioShock.
Oh yeah,
that's such a fantastic game.
Yeah.
BioShock and BioShock Infinite to a lesser extent, but they were really great games. And yeah, the Far Cry series, I never played the original Far Cry, but I got Far Cry 2 and loved it. And I've played several of the other entries in the series. I'm a big fan of racing games. I think I mentioned that. So I love Formula One. So I played Grand Prix 3 originally, and then Grand Prix 4, which is probably still the best racing game out there for Formula One, even better than the Codemasters ones. But I do have several of the Codemasters titles. And, you know, Need for Speed Underground 2. Love that game.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm a big nut for that. And many years later, when I eventually ended up owning my own car, I actually ended up buying one of the cars I used to own in Need for Speed Underground 2. I didn't have all the neon stuff and the skirts and things, but I had the same car. So yeah.
Which one was it?
Well, it was like, you would know it as the Opel Corsa. I know it as Vauxhall Corsa in the UK. It's badged differently over here. Yeah, that was my first car.
Cool.
Yeah, and it was just to cruise around in that, and that was a lot of fun. But yeah, I mean, I do try and I don't play that many games these days because I enjoy kind of making them more. But you know, if I'm going to invest the time into something, I normally make sure that it's a good game that's got decent reviews. So yeah, I'm quite a big fan of Hitman, the IO interactive one, the more recent one. So yeah, I'm trying to think, what's my favorite game? I mean, in terms of number of hours invested, it probably would be a racing game, actually. It probably wouldn't even be a shooter. Well, I say that, actually, I have played a lot of Quake 3. I've played a hell of a lot of Quake 3.
Okay.
Mostly offline, it has to be said, because I was a kid growing up. But I have also gone online and played it. And I feel like there's a real market for arena shooters that we're kind of missing at the moment. Multiplayer has gotten too complicated with... You know, I mean, I play Warzone every week with my friends. We've done that since the start of lockdown, and
oh wow, okay.
we, you know, Warzone is fun, especially Rebirth. But it's, you know, the grind of skill-based matchmaking and leveling up your guns and battle passes, and you just can't have like a chilled, like, game of.
It's always competitive.
It's exactly. You can't have a day off. Basically, you can't have an off day. If you turn up and if you're ill and you play rubbish, then you know you just feel you just die so much. It's just not a fun experience anymore. Whereas it doesn't matter how much I die in Quake 3, I still enjoy playing it. Nothing will ever beat the satisfaction of getting a BFG 9000 and like ripping through somebody or falling to my death even and exploding into a pile of giblets and things.
That's
Know,
awesome.
it's a feeling that, I don't know, maybe it's just because I experienced it when I was a kid, playing playing those games growing up, but even now I'll go back if I'm sort of, I've got like 15 minutes free. I reckon I could squeeze in a couple of rounds of Quake 3 and I'll boot it up. Yeah.
Awesome. I would have never thought that you play Warzone seriously. That's such a surprise for me somehow. That's like, I actually do not enjoy Warzone. I played it with our friends a while ago, and I was like, no, this is not for me.
It took a while for me to get into it, I think, but my friends were really into it, and we all needed to find a game that we all could play and could all enjoy. We actually started off at the beginning of lockdown by playing Age of Empires 2, and we got so good at it amongst our little group. We even had like the build orders down with all the hotkeys. You got to do it all in the right hotkeys at the right time to get your villagers doing the right stuff. And we did it for 9 months or a year or something. But then we just fancied a change, and we spent a few months playing loads of different games. We played all sorts. We played a bit of Killing Floor. We played some like puzzle kind of games like Human Fall Flat and Among Us, and just anything and everything. Anything we could get our hands on that was just a bit different. And then we eventually settled into Warzone because it's free. And we've not looked back since. Literally every Wednesday I'm there.
Awesome. Nice. So, I think one of my first games was actually Stronghold 1.
Okay. I've not played the Stronghold series.
Wow, another surprise. Actually, it's a game made by Firefly Studios, and those are from England, And I was like pretty sure that you played this. Maybe it's just really simple thinking I got there, but
no, I never have. Yeah, I mean, at some point I should probably try and list out all the games I've played. I've tried to do that with all the films I've ever watched, to kind of how many films have I watched. To qualify, you have to have watched the whole, like more than 90% of it. And it's surprisingly few considering I call myself a filmmaker, but that's because I get more enjoyment out of making stuff than consuming stuff. So I get infinitely more pleasure out of designing something or making something from scratch than I do from kind of playing other people's stuff, I think.
Yeah. Same goes for me. I never watch films. Like, I'm a total film noob, basically. In my entire life, I maybe saw like 20 films completely.
I'm a bit better than that, thankfully, but I'm several hundred. But yeah, I do get it.
When people at my working station talk about movies, I'm always the one silently walking away, but because I can't relate to this at all. Like, I watch only so few movies. Like, I really enjoy playing games. Stalker, of course, huge inspiration for my stuff, and one of my all-time favorites, the Fear series.
Yes, I was going to mention that actually. I'm amazed I forgot Fear, but yeah, I was a big fan of Fear when it came out.
The original one, it was mind-blowing back then.
I had the demo on my dad's laptop, and it was the only game that I had installed on that laptop. And so when we would go away to places and I didn't have access to my desktop, I would just sit and play the demo for Fear. And what amazed me about it was how every time I played through, I got a slightly different result. The AI would do something slightly different. They might try and flank me in a different way, or and the demo gave you that fantastic nail gun thing, and I just really enjoyed nailing enemies to the wall. And tricking them as well. You like putting mines down and kind of tricking them to come up the stairs and tripping a mine.
Also, the gore plays a huge part in the game. Also, it's so fun.
Yes.
Seeing the enemies react to your actions, that's awesome. Like, they flip tables over, they jump through glass windows, and as you mentioned, always a slightly different experience, and so cool also.
Well, if you like Fear, then you'll probably like films by John Woo, because
I think I never saw any of
they inspired the gameplay for Fear.
Oh, okay.
So yeah. So check out films by John Woo. I think Hard Boiled is one of his. That's where some really amazing action scenes in that.
Okay. So another series, and Wolf, this applies to Wolf also, is the Thief series. Huge inspiration also. And of course Fallout, the Elder Scrolls, but also real-time strategy games like, as I mentioned, Stronghold. I also played Age of Empires and Command & Conquer.
Okay.
I love Command & Conquer 3. It's, in my opinion, one of the best RTS games ever made.
Yeah, I think I may have played it. Not sure. Yeah, I enjoyed, as I say, Age of Empires. I also really enjoyed another RTS game called Empire Earth.
Oh yeah, yeah, that was also really cool. Yeah, I played this.
I love
also.
the way you could take your civilization from kind of prehistoric cavemen right through to like sci-fi.
Yeah.
That was really cool.
Also, really a hard game.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the games used to go on forever. They used to last hours and hours. Yeah, and city builders as well. Like I play a lot of City Skyline.
Yeah, I love city builders as well. SimCity 4 is perhaps the one I played the most.
Okay. I have SimCity 3000, and that's for me. That's like the OG SimCity builder.
I gotta send you a video later. There's like a city builder game also. It's called City Life, and it later went on to be Cities XXL, I think.
Oh yeah, that's the one that has a completely different developer to City Skyline, isn't it? But it's yeah.
And on my screen it looks so insane. I gotta send you the video later. It's
I find it really difficult to watch your videos because they are so wide, and I don't have a massive like monitor. Mine's like a 16:9 monitor, so it's like I have to squint to see all the details.
Oh yeah. It's somehow I can't. It's really hard for me to set it up because I need to change the desktop resolution. Then there's always something going wrong with when I try to record 16:9 videos. Like there's a part cut off or something. I'm like too noobish for this kind of stuff. Like I need to basically buy a 16:9 monitor again to make normal videos. But
just to play, maybe, yeah.
Okay, so we are getting to the final questions here. Why is your name Avenging Eagle?
It is a hangover from the very first online multiplayer game I ever played, which I think would have either been Quake 3 or it would have been 007 Nightfire. A lot of people slate the PC version of that, but I actually thought it was pretty fun, and it had a decent multiplayer. And yeah, it was. I was like 12, so I just wanted to have a cool name basically, and it was a Bond game, so it kind of sounded vaguely sort of Bond-y. It's interesting that Wolf said that he thought I was American because of the eagle.
Yeah.
I literally it's just because I thought it was a cool name when I was 12, and now because I've just kind of used it for such a long time, it's just stuck.
Yeah, like for myself also, it sort of became your brand basically.
Yeah,
and you can't change that so easily.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. On Warzone, I'm called something different because Avenging Eagle is one character too long, so I'm Reaping Hawk on Warzone.
Ah, cool. Yeah, that's somewhat similar.
Similar but different.
Yeah. So I know that you like to plan things. So where do you see yourself in the next years?
Well, my plan for the rest of this year is to continue to grow my YouTube channel. I want to do that by, firstly, I hope the documentary is a big success. I don't have a kind of a massive project planned after that, but I have lots of little projects. I want to get back into FPS Creator Classics and produce more episodes of that. And I want to produce a few more videos about game development and perhaps even try and make a video version of my texture optimization tutorial, because I appreciate it's just a wall of text at the moment and it's not very engaging. So if I can turn it into a video, then that might help people. There's a couple of projects I worked on last year that I can't talk about yet. I think you may even be aware of one of them. But until that is finished and is ready to be kind of unveiled, I can't reveal what my part of it was, but it was a very fun project to be involved in, and I did a lot of work on it and learned a lot of new skills, so I want to do a video on that. And really, yeah, I mean, I've got a figure in my head of what I'd like to grow my subscriber base out to by the end of the year. And the reason I want to grow my audience is because I want more support for whatever the next project is, whether it's a game project, obviously I want people to want to play it. Or if it's a film project, I want people to want to watch it. Or possibly even if I was to go down the crowdfunding route, it would be, I could maybe rely on them for some donations or whatever, because you know, it can get expensive. Filmmaking and game making can get expensive fast if you're you know this from commissioning people to do art for your games. If you want to move beyond the scope that you're currently at, you really have to go out to other collaborators. And that's really my challenge now, is to kind of go beyond making videos just on my own and making games just by myself. And I feel like to develop as a creative, I need to start working with other people, because I do it as part of my day job. I work with other filmmakers, I manage other filmmakers, I work with other film production companies and oversee their work. So I think I can collaborate with people. I think I'm a good collaborator. And I'm just really interested to see what comes out of those, merging of different skill sets, because I fully appreciate that I cannot do everything myself. I cannot be the master of everything myself. And even if I do spend the time, like for instance learning how to model a good looking weapon and animate it, I will never be as good at animating as Bugsy or as Errant AI. And I will never have that eye for detail as some of our other modelers. So yeah, I mean, I don't have any specific projects lined up. I've got a lot of ideas floating around. Some of them could be achieved in Game Guru, some of them could not. Some of them are not games, some of them are films, short film projects, and even some longer stuff as well. And some of them are kind of like a blurring between the two. So, bit of filming and kind of gaming in the same thing. And I think that's kind of where I'm gradually carving out my niche, because my YouTube channel is like bipolar at the moment. It's there's a lot of content about filmmaking, and a lot of the views I get are for things like my short films, but I think a lot of my comments and subscribers have come for the gaming content, and it's finding a way to merge those two together. So whether or not that means I need to kind of get more interested in virtual production, like the stuff they do on Mandalorian and things, and in the Unreal Engine, and kind of doing that kind of stuff, that would be cool. I'd love to explore that. But I haven't even downloaded Unreal yet, so we're a long way off me producing anything in it. But it's something that really interests me. I am really interested in that gradual merging between the world of film and the world of games, and I try and keep my hand in both of them, because I feel like if I just specialized in one, the other one is going to take off. And I think that there is a merging between the two. So a lot more experimentation between those two mediums, I think, for me.
Awesome. Yeah, I can't thank you enough for recording this session with me. It's been such a blast and a really, really lengthy talk. Like, we are recording for 2.5 hours now.
Yeah, you're going to have to cut this down, I think. I've noticed that I've talked so much that my voice has started cracking a little bit, and I'm getting little kind of like moments where I sound like 12. But
I'm not a fan of cutting stuff away. Like, I will edit the whole thing, which will take me forever, I think. But I think people really want to know everything when they tune in. Like Ghost LL said, he doesn't know you that well, and he hopes that this will change after this episode. I want to make sure this has changed, and I think if people would like to tune in, they will sit through the whole session, and I know that I will listen to it myself in its full length also. So I think it's lengthy, but it's been very awesome. Totally, I loved it.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's been really great chatting with you, and I feel honored to not only be a part of this podcast series, but to have also helped inspire you to make it, because I think it's a really great. It's shedding a lot of great light on members of the community. So I'm kind of sick I didn't come up with the idea myself, because it would have been a great thing to get more views on YouTube, but never mind. We'll find some other way.
I kind of feel bad now.
No, honestly, no, please. I think, it's been really great chatting with you. And I hope the audience at home has learnt a little bit about what drives me and are excited to tune in at 7 p.m. on the 24th of March to watch The Game Creators versus the Fans, my feature-length documentary about the game creators and their products and their community. So I hope to see you there.
Absolutely. There's not much more I can add to that, but there's one final joke I came up with just a few hours before our recording. And one question I want to ask is, did you play any like Electronic Arts games, like sports games?
Well, I mean, the F1 games are now Electronic Arts. I have played Electronic Arts games. I have played Star Wars Battlefront. That's
No,
EA.
I mean games like FIFA or NHL or something like that.
I mean, I'm terrible at FIFA. I've never owned a games console. So I am a PC gaming purist. And I don't do very well with controllers. So no, I've never, to my knowledge, I don't think I've ever played an EA Sports game like that. I mean, like, I've never owned one myself. I've played it around my mate's house. But like, I'm not very good.
So this is like a bit of a meme. Maybe some people will understand it. I will just leave it uncommented, and here it goes.
AE Sports. It's in the game.
Nice, so I think you understood it.
Yes, exactly. So, okay, well, there we go. That's my next game then. I've got to make a sports game.
And you gotta have this intro in.
Try not to get sued by EA.
Yeah, and so everyone, make sure to be there on Friday, the 24th of March. It's gonna be absolutely off the charts. And also, there's one other thing coming up in April, and that's our next contest.
Yes.
Everybody, listen up. It's time for the fabulous Mipastu Homecoming stream. And the theme is Filthy Rich. Make a game that makes you feel like a billionaire. Yachts, Lamborghinis, supermodels, skyscrapers and buckets of champagne. April 2023, live on Twitch.
Yay! So we are really through now. So thanks again, Scott, so much for being here. And yeah, that's it for this episode. And yeah, thanks all for listening, and goodbye. This was episode 4 of GURUCAST. Thank you very much for listening, and see you next time.